Okay, thanks, Shane. All right, so yeah, so we've been talking for now 2 or 3 months here about the new release, and one of the biggest changes we made a decision in the summer here that we were going to move TBC standard implementation of the TML programming uses a sort of standard, what they call WPF, for the dialogues and interface controls and stuff, and it's pretty limited in what it can do. So we decided we'd go off and invest in our own solution for that and substitute that in and then put that as part of our installation package. So one of the things you're going to see when you get this first installation is our installation jump from 20 megabytes to about 80 megabytes because it's incorporating this new package of tools that we've implemented. And I want to just start off by looking at that and just talking about what that does to the user interface and how that's going to change the way we do things going forward. And the best way I can start that is by looking at something like our layer manager control. So if you look at the kind of the Trimble forum over the last couple of years, one of the biggest complaints, I guess, is the layer manager function and people wanting to see that get improved. So one of the things we've done here is we've implemented this package of tools, and it's epitomized in this command. So I'm going to open up this command in fairly wide screen here just to kind of show its capabilities. So this is the new kind of user interface control that you get with this new package of tools. It's a much better, richer grid control system, which allows us to kind of more easily manage and manipulate data. And some of the really nice features you get within this are, natural sorting of the columns. The headers have the ability to just click on them and you can, reorder data based on, going from highest to lowest or lowest to highest. You can also do filters and stuff like that in here. So you can apply a filter in here and say you want to search for, anything beginning with, cat access, for example, and it will only find you that. You can then say click all. And at that point now you've reduced your layer manager list down to just the layers that you're controlling with. So if you're working with finished grade, you would just again click on the filter here and then just type in, FG dash, and it's then going to find me all my finished grade layers. Sorry, FG space dash, and it should find all those, and you can press OK. And then now I'm looking at anything with the letters FG dash in the name. So now it's got two filters being applied. It's got the cat access and also the finished grade. So, and again, when you're ready to clear that, you can clear that and you go back to the full list. So you get just those are natural changes within the user interface. Then on top of that, you get things like the ability to change the way that the grid system works. You can grab any header of any column and drag it up into this header area, and then it will sort the layers based on the groupings that you've defined. So you can change the way you're interacting with the software extremely quickly in here, and then when you're done with that, you can just drag that back into the column here and put it where you want it to be, and then you've got the columns as you want them. The other thing you can do in here is if you decide you want something closer to the left or closer to the right, you can just grab a column like the print column here and you can move it across to here. And now the print column is second in the list. So you can move these around to manage the way layer controls work much more easily. Then on top of that, you've got things like a new color palette function, and this new color palette function allows you to set up your own color palettes. So these are custom ones that we've predefined, but you can go into our RPS settings control. And if you go up into RPS settings just a second, and then find palettes in here, then you can come in here and you can create your own palettes and set your own colors up. So if you decide you wanted more shades of blue available to you or something like that, you can just create yourself a blue shades palette or a green shades palette. But we've tried to give you more direct control, and then you can turn these palettes on and off. So if you decide that you don't want the blue shades one, you can turn that off and then it won't show up in the user interface. So you can build your own color palettes in here and then save them. And then once you've saved them, then they'll appear when you run our new color control. We're beginning to roll this color control out into more and more of our commands as we go forward. And the beauty of this is it means that you can now select more colors directly without having to go to the more and then pick a color, and you have to remember the RGB, and you don't have to remember the colors and the RGB values for those colors because TBC doesn't natively remember those. So this gives you a much stronger control over color management, which will help drive consistency and behavior over time. So that's another big advantage of this tool. And then the check boxes in here allow you to do just stuff to search and replace, or you can do things to prefix and suffix layer names. So if you've got letters in here that you want to prefix or suffix with something, then down here you've got a bunch of editing tools that you can use. And you can say I want to edit layers, so you can come down to edit layers. And there's two options in here. You can add a layer, which is just the new layer control, or you can delete unprotected empty layers, and that's the kind of clearing out anything that doesn't have a protected flag that has no data on it. So that's after you've imported a CAD file, you can come in here and do this, or you can do it through the CAD cleanup process. But our goal with the layer manager is to try to give you kind of full control over all things to do with layers directly within a single user interface. Now, if you want to do things like prefix and suffix, you can come down to prefix and suffix here, just pull on the little arrow button here, and then you can say, well, I want to prefix everything with just some characters, and then you can say pick the layers that you want to apply that to. So you can just click on the first one and click on the last one you want to apply it to, and then add a prefix, and now you've added prefixes to this. And then once you've changed all these things, you can hit the apply button, and that will then activate it and make it active. So when you're editing in here, you're making the changes, but they're not applied until you hit the apply button. We do that so we can refresh the view filter controls and stuff like that when this is visible over here. When I hit the apply button, that would then take effect. So you can also add suffixes. So you could just hit, I want to add -ZZZ to the end of these. And then you can hit add suffix to the same layers, and it will now add those in. And then if you're looking to search and replace, you can then do find and replace. So I can come up into this option here and then say I want to find, let's say, XXX space dash. And then I want to replace it with nothing. So hit replace, and then it should go through here and replace those. Actually, I have to make a new selection, I think, when I do that. I've actually got this open as well. All right, ZZZ. I'm going to replace it with nothing. That's a little bug we got there, we got to still fix. So in here, if you search and replace for this, I think if I close it's because I haven't applied it yet. So if I hit the apply button, that's why. Now it's been applied, those layers have got those prefixes on them now. So if I now again search between these layers here and do search and replace, I want to search for -ZZZ and replace with nothing, hit the replace button, it should change them. Let's see, it's not. Okay, well that should work. But anyway, that's a little defect we've got in here still to look at. But anyway, the idea is you can basically come in here and do all of the changes and modifications that you want to make to layers, layer groups, all within the single user interface of the command. If you want to delete layers, you can come in here, you can unprotect them. So you can click on the unprotected flag of these layers. And then once you've unprotected them, if there's no data on them, you can then hit the delete button and it will delete them from the system. So you've got, more control over your layer management and layer groups directly within this kind of layer manager control. And this grid is going to be something you see in many of our commands going forward. Second thing that the control gives us is it gives us a new reporting mechanism. So when I go into any of our tools like Smart Feature, for example, just going to go into that. We're going to come back into Smart Feature in a little while and just show you more about that. But if I pick this feature library for a second, when we get into any of the controls, when we're using Smart Feature, you're going to see how we use this for doing takeoffs and things in a little while. And once you've done the takeoff, then when you go into like the reporting tab is like an Excel spreadsheet built into the command, and it's getting populated in real time. You can float it just by right-clicking on here and float the dialog, and it will then float it. You can put it on a second screen. So as you're doing your takeoff, you can see the results coming into here in the report directly as you're working. I'm going to show you a few reports as you go. So this Excel spreadsheet report is just a part of this user interface control kit that we've added to the system, but it's a full Excel. So if you go into here, you can type in formulas just like you can in Excel. You've got things like data. You can come in here and you can sort the data columns just like you can in Excel. And you can even go as far as things like inserting pivot tables and stuff like that into the spreadsheet. So if you're doing your takeoff, once you've got your line items in the takeoff, if you then want to collate that into a pivot table to get sub-quantities out, and I'll show you that in just a little while, you can do it. If you want to produce any bar charts or graphs or pie charts and stuff from the data, then you can do that too directly within the spreadsheet. And because it's an Excel spreadsheet, you can also do just screen grabs and then copy and paste them into here. So if I just do an F9 to start a screen grab, for example, screen grab this, come over here, and that screen grab can be pasted into the document. So if you've got things like cut fill maps on the screen and you want to put that into your document to help explain things, then you can just copy and paste directly inside TBC into your graphics interface. So it helps you build up your documentation that you're trying to build for whatever purposes you happen to be working on. So this is part of what we call the Excel spreadsheet, but again, it's all part of the user interface control we have. But this gives us a huge amount of power in all of the commands, and you'll see that our reports are all set up with multiple tabs across the bottom, just like Excel. So as you're doing a takeoff report, your count objects come into this tab, your length features come into this tab, your length with area features come into this tab, etc. So you build up your takeoff in a series of tabs, and then you can hit the refresh report, and that will build you a consolidated report that aggregates all of the information together in a single report if you want that as well. So you've got a lot more control over building the reports and what you can do with the data that's getting reported directly in here. So if you calculate some things, and I'll show you a little while, like a cross-sectional takeoff approach where we can actually do cross-sectional area takeoff, build the report, and then we can just add formats in here for the end section area calculations, for example, to build out a spreadsheet that does all the quantities for the end section areas directly from a takeoff from a 2D set of cross-section plans, for example. So there's a lot of things you get out of this. And of course, this flexibility of this report means we can just add more columns to this and do our own calculations as part of the process of delivering new reports. So that's all stuff that we're going to be doing as we kind of get into phase 2 here of this development effort that we're working on. So that's the kind of reporting elements that are coming into this tool. And then just in any kind of standard dialogue, when you're working with a command, if I just go into something like our CAD cleanup command, for example, you're going to see the use of that grid control is kind of in here. So this is the grid control I just showed you before. And then when you get across to the layers function over here, then the layers function has the same grid controls built into it. So you're starting to see we're highlighting things in different ways. The grid control is much easier. And the grid control is so easy to work with because you can just click in and start editing. You don't have to highlight it and then start over typing it. You can just start typing directly in the grid control, which is so much quicker and easier than doing it in TBC. And it's not like a double click all the time. It's just a single click to click in it, and then you can just start typing to work in it. So you're going to find that the grid editing is going to get a lot easier inside this as you go forward. And again, because you've got this sort of grouping capability, you've got the ability to just kind of click on this and put filters on this to filter this down while you're working, which means you're not working with the full list all the time. You're working with a subset of the information that's applicable to what you're doing right now. Okay. So these are the things that we're starting to implement inside here. And this Dev Express, or this package of stuff we've implemented, is huge for us. It's going to make a massive difference to the way we interact with TBC. And we hired Mel Casio into our team. Mel, you'll meet if you come to the Power User Conference in January. You'll meet him there. But Mel's a UI UX expert. He worked with me at Trimble, and I hired him into Rockpile because he brings a huge amount of knowledge into the team about how to structure things and how a workflow should be created. So I do the best I can based on my experience and stuff. But having Mel on the team means that I've got him looking over my shoulder the whole time, correcting me, and he's working out how to fix the user interface to make it easier for you guys to understand and stuff like that. So you're going to see the phase 1 rollout is now, and then we have a second rollout update coming out in January, which has got some of the features that we're still in process, but we haven't finished them yet. So we're going to push those until January. And then after that, we're going to have a big push to rework all of the user interface of the product. So by April, May timeframe, we're hoping that we'll have another release, which is mainly a usability update, which is really going to take all the tools that we've developed, boil them down, consolidate some into a new kind of comprehensive tool, but also relay out the tools and add things what we're calling Rockpile support or Rockpile assist. And that allows for new users to be able to kind of run the software and have it intelligently add attributes and parameters that you need rather than you having to work out what they mean. Rockpile Assist will actually apply those for you, and it will give you more guidance in the dialogue. So you can turn it on and off. So if you're using a new command and you don't know how to use it, you turn on Rockpile Assist and it will make it a little bit easier for you to understand the first time through it. And then once you get good at it, you can turn the Rockpile Assist off and then take care of it yourself at that point if you feel comfortable to do so. So a lot of changes coming in the team in terms of people, but also in terms of what we're delivering in terms of product. So I want to start off by just showing a kind of a quick workflow that's been added. I'm going to start off with what we call Smart Pane. Smart Pane, this new DevExpress package that we've implemented comes with a lot of extra benefits to just a sort of standard TBC. And Smart Pane is our first foray into building a tool where we can float a window and have a kind of not a dialog box like a normal command, but a pane that allows us to control things. And you're going to see us put a lot of effort into this tool over the next 3 to 6 months in terms of this is where we're going to be providing our version of like View Filter Manager and Project Explorer, which allows us to control visibility of things like georeferenced images and layer groups and point clouds and stuff like that. So we're planning to build a set of managers into here that will allow us to control the graphics more than we can do from here, and also reduce the left, but give you the benefit of these filter controls so you can reduce what you're working with. So when you're working on finished grade, you're only looking at finished grade layers and layer groups. When you're working on utilities, you're only seeing utilities, layers, and layer groups, for example. So you're going to get a better control over the information that's visible to you in the lists here, and it will control the graphics in the same way that the view filters will work. So that's kind of what we're working towards. But this Smart Pane gives us the ability to apply some of the standard functions of this DevExpress package. So it has the spreadsheet tool, so you can build a new spreadsheet in here. And then this is just a spreadsheet. So you can enter stuff in here. You can open up existing Excel spreadsheets. If you want to put in like an alignment using our edit alignment as a spreadsheet function, you could go into, and then for a template, for example, so go into RPS Command data. See, I open this one. So you could open up a master spreadsheet for the entry of an alignment and then enter the alignment data here, then copy and paste it into an alignment as a spreadsheet. But in the longer term, this will mean we can create an alignment data entry tool directly in a spreadsheet and then just have it published to the project and have it just basically copy the data into the alignment directly from this sort of spreadsheet entry. And this allows us to kind of build up things like bid sheets and then populate bid sheets with takeoff information. So there's a lot of stuff we can do with a sort of standard templating approach where we can build a template and then populate information into the template from other reports that we're generating, and then use this to do the calculations of whatever you're trying to do for like end section areas and things like that. So there's a lot of things we can add just because we've got a new spreadsheet tool built into the software. Second thing you can do is you can open up a full PDF viewer. So PDF viewer basically means I can go in here and I can say open up a PDF file. So I'm just going to go to downloads here and I'll just go find a PDF file here that we can work with. Let's look at this one. And in the PDF viewer, this is a full PDF viewer. So you've got, the full controls over being able to review the pages. You can right click and do the normal kind of marquee zoom, and you can zoom in on things like that. And then you can, right click and go to the hand tool and pan around. And then over the side here, you can see the page thumbnails. So you can turn on the thumbnails of the sheets. You can turn on bookmarks. If you've got bookmarks in the file, you can also look at the comments that people have made on the spreadsheet and make your own comments. So in the comments, you can go to the comment tab here and you can highlight things. So if you want to select that data right here, you would just go into the selection mode, select the data, and then highlight it with the highlight tool, for example. So you can just go in here, do that, and it's now highlighted. So as you've used the information off the plans, you can have this floating on a second screen. So again, these views are all floatable, so I can just right click on here and float it. And once it's floating, it's a separate dialog now. So I can now grab it and move it around. So I can grab this window and put it on a second screen, make it full size. And then I can use that to mark up the drawings as I'm using the data in the plan view. I can mark up the profile or the PDF file directly in here. And when I'm happy with this, I can then redock it. So I'm just going to go back into here. And I'll put that on my second screen for a second. And I'm just going to say close that one. And then we can go into things like a word editor. So this is a full word processor. So this is like Microsoft Word, if you like, but not quite the full Word, but it has most of the rich text editing functions. So you've got, all the bolding, italics. And our goal with this is to connect this with the text functions of TBC. So if you come in here and you open up a document, so you can do file open and open up a Word doc, or you can type in a document with full formatting, put tables and things into the document, put headers and borders and title, headers and footers into the pages. All that kind of stuff can be done in here. And again, you can copy and paste things from here. So again, if I do, a screen grab again, I can grab a screen
Looks like Alan might be experiencing some technical difficulty here. Let's hang out for a second here and see if he rejoins. There, Alan?
Can you hear me, Shane?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay. Can you still see my?
No, you're not sharing your screen at the moment.
Yeah,
seems like you're having an issue with your internet because you're.
Yeah, it looks like I'm going to turn off my camera here just to get rid of that. I'm going to share my screen again now. I had a computer glitch there of some sort.
Okay. Yeah, I can see your screen now. You still there, Alan? Looks like we might have lost him again. Okay, looks like Alan's I'm assuming he's gonna restart or reset his router. So apologies everybody, but if you don't mind hanging out for a minute or two here, we should be back.
I know that everybody hasn't seen much yet, but I guess we could take questions if anybody's got any.
Alan? Yeah. Yeah, I let everybody know. Yep. Okay. Yeah, so Alan's just letting his computer restart here, so he should be back in a minute or two.
You notice any difference by measuring the amount of caffeine you're having?
When I was drinking it, it was not as.
It wasn't good.
It wasn't as
like just didn't give that. It was more water.
It was more watered down. But
Like I always hear like coffee drinkers. They say like I've heard one say like I've never.
Okay.
I don't
Okay,
think we
we've
were
got
supposed to hear that conversation.
So we've got a question in the chat from Michael. Why are you putting a word processor into TBC? Yeah, it's kind of a question. Kind of because it was just very easy. We're more interested in the spreadsheet part of it, I think. But there are some situations we feel where we might want to report report directly to a word processor rather than it via a spreadsheet first. And to be honest, it was one of those. It's an extra line to get that spreadsheet, to get that word processor piece in, as well as the spreadsheet part of it. Nobody's going to force you to use it. Okay. When will these new updates be available? I think Alan did address that at the very beginning. As soon as we can. I'm not going to say exactly when, unfortunately. I think he reckoned we're. Did he reckon we were about 95% done? We've still got some testing to finish off. We're hoping to finish within the next week. But we always would err on the side of putting it out without, we finish the testing before we release it rather than releasing it first. Danny asked a question. Can we get it so we can link to PDF spreadsheets, Word documents, maybe via QA notebook? Link. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking there, Danny. Maybe that's something we can raise at the end and go into a few more specifics.
I think I understand what he's getting after. He's wanting to know if he can like hyperlink from the PDF or spreadsheet of SmartPane. So like say he has a spec from a spec book that he has pulled up in the PDF viewer, and he wants to put a link to that spec in QA notebook next to an item. So he might have like a curb detail or something that he puts a hyperlink to like a spec for the curb that, that way he could quickly get to that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to investigate, but potentially, but I can't say yes or no without, because we've not really investigated that yet.
Danny, did I get your question? Did I get the essence of your question? Yep.
Okay, good. I'm going to sidestep the next question about Trimble and B2B and RPS. That's not one I'm in a position to be able to discuss. Alan might be able to later on, or he might wish to do that in a different forum rather than on this call. I don't know. But I'm not going to attempt that one, I'm afraid. Sorry. And the last one there from Ryan, TBC 25.2. That's part of the reason that it's been delayed, is that everything that we're doing, we're running it on our versions and in the latest TBCs, the 2520s. And it has caused us some issues, which is why things have taken a little bit longer than we'd hoped.
So I'm back now. Apologies for that. My computer just died on me, so not sure what happened there, but it's a shame we're still recording, right?
Yep. And I can see your desktop.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for my TBC to start here.
Okay. Wynn and I answered a few questions here as we were waiting. There was one question on bid to win that Wynn didn't want to attempt. He said maybe you'd take a stab at it if you want, or maybe you didn't want to take it in this
We
class.
can do that. Yeah. So while I'm just waiting for TBC to start here, TBC is starting.
Yeah, the actual question is just in the chat there, Alan, if you want to see it.
Okay, just 1 second.
Yeah, we've answered the others apart from Marshall's question about Trimble.
Yeah, so doesn't affect us at all. So with bid to win, so there's two things we're looking at. One is we're starting to talk to people about interfacing to HCSS bid to win in 8 software, the 3 big estimating suites here in the US. And I guess also we'll probably get requests to do Procore and stuff like that as well at some point. Bid to win currently, the interface I know about a bid to win is either a spreadsheet interface where you can just load a spreadsheet and just tell it which fields in the spreadsheet, which pay items. And in our spreadsheet tool, we've put all the data into the report. You'll see that in a minute or two when we get into the reporting side, so that you can just match the fields. And it's in a fixed column format, our data. So you can basically say column 3 is the quantity and column 4 is the units of the quantity kind of thing. And then column 2 is the name or the description of the quantity, so that you can then just map the cells directly. Or if you want to in bid to win, you can say this cell equals this quantity, and you can just kind of map the cells from one to the other. That's the Trimble way of doing it from the Trimble reports, because the Trimble reports don't put everything always in the same columns, which is what we're doing. We did it deliberately so that we can easily map it across into other systems if we need to. And if there's a need to do a direct link into bid to win or HCSS, if there is an API that we can get access to, and we will be talking to HCSS and bid to win about connecting our tools into that to make it a bit easier to get the data across. Then if there's APIs available to us to do that, we are going to try and implement all of that. Once we get the first version out and all the earthworks reporting is done to the decent level, which will be by the January timeframe, we'll then be in a position to say, well, here's our report in our current form. I want to get some user feedback on that before we kind of say it's now locked down and final. And at that point, we'll then take it to HCSS and Bidwin and say, okay, this is our data. What do we do to get it into your systems from the point of view of estimating standpoint? So that's kind of where we're at right now. But our plan is to make sure that this does all link in with the estimating suites that you guys are using to make it easy. Okay, so I'm going to go back to where I was. Let's just start a brand new project again here. I apologize for the crash I had there. But let's just show you this rich text editor. So the rich text editor, I'm not going to show you how a Word document works. I mean, you guys will use Word, I'm sure. But the fact that that Smart Pane tool has it in, and I don't think the crash was related to Smart Pane at all. I think it was just my computer died. I haven't restarted it for about a week, so it's probably just ran out of memory somewhere. So in Smart Pane, if I just run Smart Pane here, Smart Pane runs up in the command pane. So you can see down at the bottom here, you've got the normal command pane, and we've got Smart Pane running side by side with it. I kind of mentioned the spreadsheet, the PDF, the Word editor. As I say, it's a full Word editor, so you can come in here, write a Word document. My goal is that TBC has rich text functionality. It's just not really implemented in a way that anybody can get access to it. So our goal with this is that you can type in a document here and you can just copy and paste it into TBC. That's kind of where we're moving towards with this, is to kind of, if you put formatting in here, like if you use the sort of bold, underline, superscript, subscript type stuff, then TBC does have support for that. It's just kind of hidden and it's an embedded coding. And so what we'd have to do is mix what we're typing in here and recognize that coding and then be able to map it across to the sort of smart text functionality of TBC to be able to take rich text from here and put it in here, or copy and paste stuff from TBC into here as necessary. But you can also do just copy and paste using screen grabs and put pictures into here as well from the screen. So if you've got 3D views or plan views that you want to capture, you can just use any screen grabbing tool, copy it to the clipboard, and then paste it directly into the Word document. And then things like a scheduler, this is really just a calendar tool, but it comes as standard with this sort of DevExpress package that we've used. So we kind of figured that it might be kind of handy to have a calendar associated with each project where you could capture the days that you worked on the project, what you did on the project, when revisions came in. So you've got a complete calendar history of things that happened on the project. So it's a standard calendar tool, designed for people building a calendar as opposed to kind of making notes of what happened on what date. But you can use it like a diary in the same way. So you can just build a new entry, just type in here, just type subjects and stuff, and they just become sort of standard records within this calendar. And each project has its own calendar file, so it gets saved in the project folder. And so when you open up the project, the calendar will be there for that particular project as you see fit. So again, using the calendar tool, and we figured that we can do more with that in the future. Maybe we can log the number of hours that you're working on the project, when you open the project, when you close the project. We could capture those and maybe create records in the calendar somewhat automatically, so we could actually log the number of hours that you've put into building a project and stuff like that. So if that's something that people are interested in, let us know what kind of events you might want to capture, like when you run a volume report or something like that, major events that you do while you're working on a takeoff. Maybe there's things in here that we can capture, and then you can look at this in week view, month view, whatever you see fit, and then you'd be able to see all the sort of key dates and things that happened on a project from start to finish. So we figured that this might be useful, so we've plugged it in for now and given you the ability to record values in here, and then we're looking for feedback as to what people might want to do with this going forward. And then the last one is this, what we call RPS Maps. And RPS Maps is using a standard satellite image provider technology, and it's a super fast map. You can zoom in extremely accurately, and it's extremely quick to navigate. You can move around extremely fast, and it's retiling pretty much on the fly. And we figured that this is kind of handy because you can read out the lat long of a location directly in here. You can also do things like turn on the state planes, and when you do that and you zoom out, you can see all the state plane zones are listed directly on here. We've mapped this into the system, and so if you click anywhere, if you zoomed in somewhere and you click on the screen here, it will tell you which state plane zone you're in. So if you type in an address over here, let's say I type in As you start typing in, it picks up addresses for you directly, so it goes directly. This is kind of where I live, and at this point, when you've entered this kind of position, then you could say, well, okay, I've got a project that's on this high school over here, and you can then say, well, I want to draw a boundary around that. So you could say, I want to draw, let's say, a polyline, and just sketch in. I'm just going to sketch in the boundaries around here, just roughly, just so you can see kind of what I'm doing here. This is the kind of question we often get is, how do I set up a project and kind of match up Google Earth to TBC, and how do I know which coordinate system I'm supposed to be in, and all that kind of stuff. So we've decided we plug in this tool and kind of try to make use of it like this. And at that point, then I just hit enter. So I'm finished with that line. If the state plane zone is on, I just click on here. It tells me I'm in Colorado North. So now I can go to the Coordinate System Manager in TBC. So I go up to Project Settings. I can just come into Coordinate System and then just say I want to change. I'm going to pick Colorado North. So I'm just going to find my Colorado North on my list here. So it says United States, Colorado, this NRSRS 2022 B1. So that's this one. And then say Finish and say OK. So that sets up the coordinate system of the TBC project. Now I've got the line drawn here. I can say save to project, and then zoom extents, and there's the boundary line. And if I then turn on the background image on here, that will get me the street map. Will show up in here, and then I can just change the street map to the satellite view. Just coming up here, and hopefully now you should see that high school that I've got over here is the high school that I've got over here. And you can see it's extremely well mapped out. This mapping is using the same coordinate systems as this is. And so consequently, when you draw a boundary in here or you draw line work in the map view, you can then publish it back to the map view over here. So this is a good way of starting a project, picking out where the boundary of the project is, publishing it into TBC with the right coordinate system. And now everything you do in here is now coordinated and georeferenced to state plane, which means when we publish to Google Earth, it's going to end up in the right position, right? So we don't have to do much more than that. And if you've got a couple of key points on here, let's say you do have the building and they show you the corners of the building, you can click on a building point here and a building point here to set up a baseline, copy it to the project, and it would then put it up here. Then when you georeference your PDF plans, you can use those same two control points to place and orientate the PDFs and have them aligned and scaled directly to the project. And then when you do your takeoff, everything you do is in the coordinated space. So when you publish to Google Earth, everything is in the right place, right? So this is kind of where SmartPane is going to provide you a lot of controls and a lot of tools that will help you kind of manage projects going forward. And then here you've got the ability to show the satellite view, street view as well. So if you want to see the street addresses, or you can show a satellite hybrid, which is it's got the street names and the map tiles and stuff on here. Now we're paying for this service, and so it's included in our All Tools package. It won't be included in anything else because this is something that we're paying for, and up to now we're including it in our annual fee. We're going to look at how much it costs us a year to run this service once you guys start using it, because we do have to pay for tiles used. So every time you zoom in and out and it's retiling all the time, that tiling is something we pay for. So at the end of the day, we may end up having to pass a charge back to you guys for use of this, but we think this is a pretty powerful tool. And there's a lot of things we can do as overlays in here, and we could theoretically publish from here to here, so we could take it from the project and bring it into here, or we can take data from here and put it back into the project. So this gives us quite a lot of tools. And this nice feature about this is that we can, again, float this view and put it on a second screen so we can see this while we're working, and we can jump between the different modes that we've got open in here. So if we've got the different sheets, we can open up the PDF file and have that for the project that we're working on a second screen, along with a spreadsheet where we might be making notes, a scheduler, capturing times and dates. And so you get a kind of a management toolkit now, what you can really use to help manage your projects while you're working on them. Okay. So anybody got any comments on that or feedback on that? What do you think? Do you like that? Can you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you like that, or can see some value in it? Okay. All right, good. So a few of you said that. All right, so that's the SmartPane type stuff. So let's get into some more kind of meaty stuff here. So one of the big focuses that we've had in this release is to really focus on the workflows that we've kind of been trying to get to for 6 years we've been in business. So one of the visions that we have of trying to turn data prep and takeoff from many menus of many commands down to one menu with way fewer commands to give you all of the key functions that you want. And we're getting there now, I think, with things like PDF Manager. So we can review project files. We can open up PDFs and georeference them, and we can extract vectors from them. We can then clean them up using the CAD cleanup tools. And then you can get into the layer management. So we've got the layer management tools now. And then you get into the sort of editing of the line work and creating of the elevations of the line work and all that kind of stuff. So cleaning up the data, then drawing, editing, elevating, and then getting into the takeoff process. We've developed really three main tools, really. Smart Feature is one of them. And then Smart Takeoff is the second tool, and then what we call Smart Profile is the third tool. And I'm going to try and show you kind of how those guys work. But in the process of doing that, we've also been upgrading the PDF Manager, and Win is on the call here. So is Win still here? Yes, he is. Okay. So I'm going to show the latest version of PDF Manager. It may have changed since yesterday when I last looked at it, because Win's been working on it overnight. But PDF Manager, we're trying to take it, further than it's been in the past and give you more and more functionality in PDFs. We haven't maybe satisfied everybody's needs yet, but we're still pounding away at this one because we really see this as a major stepping stone of our product. And if I just come out here, and I'm just going to load my favorite Morrison Farms job just because it's the one I know best. Load this one. And again, that same PDF view that I just showed you in Smart Pane has been implemented in here. So instead of using the standard tool that we had before, we've now got the same functionality in here. So we've got the thumbnails, we've got the ability to see the comments, we can go in to look at the current bookmarks that are currently in the system, and then you can scroll down through the sheets, you can maximize the view as you've always been able to do. And then once you're in a view, you can use the control key and zoom in and out, and you can pan and stuff like that. And it's extremely quick and responsive to working, which is pretty incredible set of tools that we've now got available to us here. And then once you've set up your sheets, this is basically the same as it's been in the past, other than the fact we've changed this and changed some of the navigation functions in here. And so now we can go back into the PDF, placement and georeferencing stuff that we've always done. So nothing major has changed here. So if I just pick the grading plans, the major changes are in the data extraction section, and I want to get to there. So we're going to pick up the grading plan. So it shows me the grading plan here, and then I can say I want to scale it with a scale bar. So I'm going to use scale bar. Just measure these 2 points from here to here, and then type in an elevation or a distance of 100. At that point, then you can move it as well. So you can say, I want to move it from a specific location. If you know a coordinate, you can just pick a coordinate here and then tell it what coordinate that should be at. And once you've done that, you can then put in your clipping boundary. So I'm just going to clip it to the rectangle here. And then at that point, then you can say georeference the page. And you just do that for each of the pages that you're working on. And once you've georeferenced all the pages, just in the way that we did in the past, then you can move to the data extraction stage. So I'm going to go to data extraction now. And this is where the big changes are happening with this current release that we're working towards. And here you've got the ability to preview the data before you extract it, and then select out of the preview what you want to extract. So you don't have to extract everything anymore. You can be more selective about what you're going to extract. So you can put a bit more time in here, which will save you time downstream, right? So you can either just extract everything like you've always done, and once it's all extracted, you can then, go into the cleanup stage of cleaning it up and sorting it out. Or in here, you can spend a bit of time deciding out of all the layers that are available to you, which do you want to bring out, which do you not want to bring out, and which ones do you want to process and which ones don't you want to process. So in here, you can do things like, I know I'm going to prefix all my layers, so I'm going to just do that first. And having done that, you can then say, I also want to override the line rate. And then here you can say, well, I don't really know what I'm looking at yet in terms of the data. So I don't know whether this is a layered PDF or not. So I don't know whether I need to allocate layers or this. And it's black and white, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to allocate colors, but whether I'm going to use the PDF layers or use this layers, it depends a little bit on what's in the file. So you can set the settings up as you kind of think you're going to need them. I don't typically want the fills, so I'm going to leave those turned off, but I typically want text and I typically want the lines. At this point here, you can then say, well, let's preview what we're going to get, and it will then extract the data kind of, so you can see it, and it color codes it based on what it's finding. And then down in this list now, it's telling you these are the layers. So in this case, you say, okay, well, there are no layers in this particular PDF because it's been allocating its own. So then I can just say allocate layer here, and it then re-previews it based on that setting. And so now you can see what you're going to get per layer. You can then say, well, I want to preview selected layers only. So now when you click on each layer, it's going to show you what would come out on that particular layer, right? So you can scroll through the layers. And if you see one like this and you sit there and go, okay, that's just like the contour elevation labels, and it's not text because it's on a line layer. So I'm probably not going to need that. So I can turn off that data from the point of view, looking at it from a preview standpoint. There's nothing else on there that I really need. So you can go through these layers. Well, there's a line on here that I'm probably going to need, so I'm going to need to keep that one. This one is just some text items. Don't see, there's these polygons maybe for the manholes, so we might need these, or the catch basins or whatever. So here there's some contours, we need those. Then here there's some text data items, but again, these are on a line layer, so there's no text here, it's just polyline text, so we probably don't need that either. So we can turn that off. So you can go through and preview what you want to keep. And at that point, then you can then say, when I'm happy with everything that I've got here now, you can then say, well, let's turn that off. And it's now going to re-preview the data based on what you said you want to extract. Do one final check on it. At that point, you can then hit the extract data function. And that's now going to pull all the line work out and give you what you asked it for in the current layering. Now, there's a bit of work still going on here. Wynn can maybe talk to that a little bit. If you're still here, Wynn, do you want to just say a few words on what you're doing there?
Yeah, I'm not sure which ones you've got, but today's one is now offering the layer groups option that you've got in there. And it's a little bit better now at detecting what's dashed and what isn't. There's one issue we need to talk about later about where it sort of merged two together that it shouldn't have done, but there's a few things like that. Mm-hmm. Text is now coming out on the correct layers. It's picking better choices of fonts now than it was. Some of the text was always coming out in Arial when it should have been in Times, things like that.
Okay, so this is 100%.
That's the bulk of it.
So we've done a lot of work here to do our own data extraction now from PDF. So we've now got a much better handle on all of the PDF functionality under our own control now. So it's no longer using the TBC extraction at all. So we're doing our own join dash lines functions. We're doing our own identification of that. What is a dash line? What is a solid line? So it's 100% under our control now. So if there's any issues with what we're extracting, let us know what they are, and then we can now move it forward. Whereas before we were totally reliant on what Trimble was doing. And again, we couldn't move it forward and change it because we were just using the standard Trimble functionality. So one of the big parts of a lot of this stuff is, while we're waiting for Trimble to kind of fix bugs on their current extraction, we decided that, well, we can't wait, so we need to kind of do our own. So we put Wynn on doing this. So he's been working on PDF, understanding PDFs much better, and being able to extract data much more richly and with much more control. So this now gives us a really good way of controlling the data and moving it forward into the future. So you're going to see more and more improvements around this kind of stuff going forward. So I just turn off the line markings here because they kind of get in the way. So now we've got the line work extracted, and now we would just go into the standard sort of data prep processes to clean up the data and sort it all out. And you're going to see that there's more data coming out of here now. Things like text like this was missing before. It's actually in the PDF. We're actually extracting it all and placing it on the drawings for you. So that's the next big thing that we've been working on. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to jump into looking at this alignment data in the middle here. Just pick that layer. I'm just going to go to isolate, just so we can isolate that one layer. I'm just going to turn off the PDF file for a minute. Okay, so you can see that we've still got a couple of little issues in here. This is like a dash line that's coming out, that's picking up the tick lines along the center line. So I'm just going to delete that. That's irrelevant for what we're doing here. I just wanted to get the center lines of the two roads here together. I'm just going to get rid of these tick mark lines as well. And so we've got the two center line data, and these center lines aren't 100% complete. So we would just go normally into Smart Edit and join these lines. The other thing we've added in here is we've made a change to the license server. So you're going to see that the speed of loading commands, the first command you run will still be a little slower because it's loading the DevExpress library in the background. And once you've loaded that, then after that, all commands will run much, much faster for you. So even if you're not using the smart switch to toggle between the commands, if you close a command and reopen it, you're going to find that most commands are going to run much, much quicker. Things like smart edit will still take a few milliseconds longer, because it's a huge command that's getting loaded. But in here, I'm just going to join these lines together just so I've got two alignments I can work with, to show you the next piece of this. So we're going to just join this line together here. I'm going to do a new one. Okay, so I've got two lines there that I want to make into alignments. And the next tool we've written, this is one of Vitali's tools. Vitali wrote this one to convert alignment or line strings into alignments. So in this case, you can just say, I want to turn these two lines into alignments. I want to put them on a layer, and I want to label them with the standard, TBC alignment labeling functionality. So in here you can say, when you've done it, you want to delete the existing lines, or you can leave them in place if you want to keep the original line strings. And then all you do is you just click on the two lines that you want to work with here, in this case, two alignments. Once you've got the two alignments selected, you can then just say, I want to apply that. So you hit apply. And those two now just got created as finished grade alignments. So if I just go to my finished grade alignments layer here, if I turn those on now, you can see that the labels are all on here. So these are alignment tick marks. These are the labels that just got created. And I've got two alignments that were just created directly from these. These are just horizontal alignments. So turning like data from imported CAT or imported PDF data directly into alignments using one step, and that will do not just the creation of the alignments, but also the labeling of the alignments at the same time. And so those now are normal alignments. If you click on one of these and go to edit, that will take you into the alignment editor, and you can see in this case, because it's not curvilinear data, it's chorded, so you get the series of line segments. If you ran the optimizer on that, then you would get curvilinear data, and you would end up with a curvilinear alignment that works. So that's your kind of approach. If it was coming in from CAD data and you joined the CAD data together, then you obviously would have the straights, the arcs, the straights, etc. But in PDF, you don't get any of that. You just get the chords. But it's good enough for doing a takeoff, or maybe doing some basic models. But if you want to get the true geometry, then you're going to need the CAD, or you're going to type it in still in that case. Or you can run this with the optimizer and then maybe modify the information in the editor to get the curves with exactly the right radiuses and things. But anyway, that's the quick alignment tool, which allows you to convert line work into alignments in a couple of seconds. So that's the next step. And then the next step after that, so the PDF manager's improved. Turning lines into line work and then alignments is the next big improvement. The next one after that is going into things like featurizing information. I'm going to do it on this data set just to kind of show you how featurization works and how our smart feature tool works. So if I turn on all of the layers here for a minute, and let's say I isolate the building pads layer for a second. So the building pads are all on one layer here, and I'm just going to get rid of this one. That's not a building pad. And we want to turn these into building pads, and building pads have materials associated with them. So typically, you might have a concrete on top of aggregate inside each of these areas, and you want to kind of generate that as a report, and these will become boundaries that you want in your takeoff report. And so, to get into B features, typically you would take these lines and you'd say, well, let's relayer those to my building pads layer, and then let's shade them in. So you'd have to pick them all, and you'd come over here and say, let's make sure they're all closed. So you'd hit auto close, yes. Then you'd say, once you've got them closed, you'd have to turn them into line strings. And once they're line strings and they're closed, you can then say, fill them, and you can make them a red fill color. And then you might want to go in and name them all. So you go in and change the name to everything. So featurizing an object goes through, relayering, coloring, renaming, closing, adding fills. It's like a 6 or 7 step process. Well, we thought, okay, well, why don't we change the way that we work with imported data, and let's go through this process of creating features which are smart, that can carry all of the information that we want them to carry. So smart feature is about featurizing data, or creating data which are features rather than lines with layers and colors and line styles that says it's a building pad. So in here we can say, I'm going to use this this feature library. So we create a feature library for each project based off a master. and then you can edit that one, and that's then specific and unique to that project. But at the end of it, we've made a copy of the feature library in our master library so that you can use that same library on the next project when you want to build it. So you can grow your feature library from project to project, or you can leave it as an exclusive feature library for that one particular project because it's a unique kind of project. The idea being that you can grow your feature library over time. And the way the feature management works is you start out using RPS settings. And in here, if I go to Smart Feature Settings, the first thing is you can create categories, subcategories, and material categories. And the categories, we give you a bunch as a default, and then you can add to these as you want. How you organize the data is really up to you. I've looked at 2 or 3 different ways of organizing the data, and I've come down to one that I recommend. But you can always say, well, hang on, I don't agree with that. I'm going to go this way because I think it would be easier for us, or better the way we organize information, whatever, right? So you can choose how you use these categories and subcategories to suit yourself. But I came down to this approach because I just found that this organized the data the way I wanted to organize it for the way I particularly like to work. And you can either follow suit or you can decide how to do it yourselves from there. But we can advise you around that as necessary. So in here, the categories we've got here, let's say I've got finished grade features, and you can give them a description, you can give them a type. So in the feature categories, we have 2 types of categories currently, feature categories and utility categories. And then under the feature categories, up here, we've then got the subcategories. And here I decided to organize them based on whether they're area features, count features, length with area, or length with width. So the difference between these in standard TBC is the length with area is like a curb line, but a curb line can have a cross-sectional area of the curb itself, but it can also have a cross-sectional area of maybe a backfill dirt quantity behind the curb and maybe an underlying subgrade quantity that sits underneath the curb. And you can assign as many areas to a feature as you want. And so if you're trying to build something like, if I just go to Smart Pane for a second, let's just cancel out here a minute so I can show this. Let's just open up the master PDF here so we can look at it. So if we look at the details here, this detail here is of the curb. And this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. So if you know the cross-sectional area of this area and the cross-sectional area of this and the cross-sectional area of the aggregate, you can make 3 areas of that and say it belongs to a feature line, which could be the edge of pavement, or it could be the back of curb line, or it could be the flow line, whatever you think. And then when you apply that area, it will then calculate the volume of the curb, the volume of the aggregate, and the volume of the dirt behind the curb directly from that cross-section. So you can import this page and scale it. And once you've scaled it, you can then trace over the top of the areas and then calculate the areas and then apply those to a feature and then have that feature run the quantities for you. So that's kind of how the area feature works. The other one is a length with width feature. And the length with width feature is when you've got road pavement. If I turn on the road features here, well, I'll do that in a minute. But on a road, you've got lanes, pavement lanes. So Dan Miller, I've been working with him on this somewhat in the background. He's a big road estimator, and Dan wanted the ability to be able to take off areas of pavement quickly and assign not just the pavement quantities, but also things like rebar quantity, tie bar quantity, dowel bar quantities, and stuff like that. So we built in formulaic information into length width features that allow you to define the length width feature, which is by picking a line, which could be the center line or the edge of a pavement line, and defining a width or defining 2 widths, 2 offsets. You can build a parallel lane feature, and then within that lane feature, you can put in the quantities of the materials, and then on top of the materials, you can put in the quantities of rebar and things like tie bars and stuff like that as well. I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. So in here, you build up your feature, you build up your feature categories and your feature subcategories. So just go back and repick that again. So finished grade features, and then you pick these in here. So you got length areas, length width features, area count and length. And then beyond that, you might have like generic features like finished grade contours, finished grade brake lines, those kind of things would just be generic lines that don't have any volumes or any quantities associated with them. They're just going to be used for modeling purposes. And then beneath that, you have the material categories. And material categories are things like aggregates, composite materials like asphalt, concrete, concrete reinforcement, which would include things like rebar, tie bars, dowel rods, dowel baskets, things like earthen materials, which would be your topsoil, soil, rock, and then things like earth and select would be other aggregates that you buy or other materials that you buy, which you'd put into the select category. Geosynthetics for materials like membranes and geotextiles. Landscaping, which would include things like sod, seed and mulch, hydroseeding, that kind of thing. And then other materials are just others that don't fit into these categories. Surface treatments would be things like subgrade compaction or lime stabilized base, that kind of stuff. And then utility materials would be things like the materials that go into making the pipes or the manholes, so reinforced concrete, steel, PVC, HDPE, those kind of materials would be applied in here. Then they get applied to the utility objects as we build them. So you build the categories, these are already predefined, and most of the standards are already built into our standard template, but you can build onto that as you see fit. And then this report scale basically says when you run the report in the dialog, how much of the height of the dialog do you want it to fill? And you can control that directly from here. And the reason you do that is on different screens, you might want more or less height of the report, so you can control it directly through this setting right here. So once you've defined your categories and your subcategories, then you get into the building of the features. And in the building of the features, first of all, you define the feature types. So here's the ones that I've come down to so far, at least, and I'm still adding to it as I go. But things like demolition areas, demolition counts, demolition lengths, demolition length areas, demolition length widths, erosion control areas, counts and lengths, existing areas, counts, lengths. And in addition to the sort of areas, counts and lengths, you've also got lines, points, and polygons. These are just like your existing contours. This could be existing spot levels, and this could be, existing grading limits or something like that, which don't give you any kind of individual area count or length count. They're just giving you an area that you might use for doing a subcalculation or something like that going forward. Then you've got your finish grade, the same thing. And then down here, you've got things like utility lines, and we use this for the Smart Profile tool, which we'll get to in a few minutes. So this is your first kind of setup, is getting your feature types defined. And when you define a feature, let's just pick one. Then down here, when you define the feature, you just give it a name, you give it a description, and you give it a type. And then down here, you can say that when I build these, I want certain materials always assigned to these, if you want some defaults, and I want certain attributes always assigned to these. So you can choose to, a finished grade area will always have this attribute, and that would then apply to any area feature that you build of that type going forward. But you can define these at the feature level when you start getting to the next step, which is defining the features. So when you get into defining features, you then can build up these are features I've already created. So if I go to the finished grade features, you've got area features, length features, etc. And these are the area features that we have. So for things like beauty strips or boulevards, building pads, landscaping areas, building other types of pads like dumpster pads, parking asphalt, heavy duty, light duty asphalt parking, pond clay lining, etc. So these are all the ones that you need for this job and most other jobs. So this job is fairly characteristic. It's got curb, it's got sidewalk, it's got boulevard areas, it's got building pads, it's got lot lines, it's got contours, all the sort of standard stuff that you'd find on a normal subdivision project. So the sort of standard features would apply from one job to the next. But when you define these features, what makes them different is that when you click on a feature here, you can then define the attributes of it. So it has a name, a short name. Now, if you go out and survey and you use the same short names in the field, when you bring that data back in from the field, you can actually run the featureization on the imported file that you've done with your data collector, and it will then featureize it and add the quantities and stuff directly to that. So if you're using it for like a construction inspection workflow, if you use the same short name in the field in the office, then you can basically automatically map all of the imported survey data directly to features, and then it will add the quantities to that. So when you get down into the detail here, you can then say it's an area feature, it's categorized in the finished grade feature group, it's going to be an area subcategory, it's going to carry this color, which is by layer, which means if I put it on a layer and that layer is red, it's going to come up in red. It's going to go onto the building pads layer. I want the elevation to be 3D variable elevation, or you can say, well, in this case, all my building pads are single elevation, so I can define them as a single elevation and then just save, and that will update your library. And then you can say it's feature classification, it's part of finished design. So this allows you to organize your data, and that helps you when you come down to takeoff reporting later on. And then further down here, you can say that I want to include the building pads in my earthworks report. And what that basically means is if you say yes to that, then each of these building pads will become a sub area in your earthworks quantity. So you'll get the total earthworks quantities for the whole site, and then under each of these features, you'll get the earthworks quantity for each of the building pads in your project. So any feature can have that assigned, but you don't necessarily want to assign it to every feature. So if you go to this one, for example, you see that one's turned off, but if I go to the clay liner, it's turned on. So the pond area would be reported, but the sumps in the pond wouldn't be reported. So you can choose out of each feature which ones will appear as a subgrade adjusted quantity, whereas in TBC, every area feature just gets reported directly. You don't have to report them all because most of them you're probably not going to want the sub quantities for each one. And then for each feature, you can define, if I go back to building pads, you can define the materials that go in there and the default depths of the materials. So this has got composite concrete on the top, 10 inches thick by default, aggregate 6 inches thick. But when you actually deploy the feature, and I say make all these building pads, then you can change these settings at runtime. So when you start using it, you can override these. So if you've got different depths of grade, these are just the defaults. You can override them if you want to. And then on top of that, you can add attributes to the feature, and the attributes will appear in the properties pane of the feature, and you can have as many attributes as you want. You can use them for things like phase numbers. So if you want to group all these and say they all belong to phase 1, then you can do that by putting a phase attribute on here. When we're doing things like cross-sectional areas for cross-section takeoff, then in here you might want to put a station attribute, and then when you kind of digitize areas of the cross sections, you can say these areas belong to station 1150.00 or whatever as you're building it. So there's a set of tools in the drawing function that allows you to add the attributes directly to the features as you're creating them. And things like exaggeration as well would be another attribute. So if you're doing cross-section takeoff and the cross-sections are exaggerated 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 or 10 to 1 or something like that, then you want to put an exaggeration factor in there. And then when we do the report, we use the exaggeration factor to reduce the quantities of the area that is measured by TBC. We just adjust it by 10% or 50%, depending on the exaggeration factor that you've got in the model. So you build your feature libraries up, and once you've built the feature library, there's not much more to it. So I'm not going to go off and build this again. It's already built. And then once you've done your features, you can build your utilities. Utilities is kind of the same way. You have utility networks. So we've got all the standard utility networks in here, and then they have a target layer. So you can, again, look at what layer you're putting these on, and that will define the sort of default colors. But when you click on any of these, you can just edit these values and change the names if you don't like the names. And then you can go into the define utilities section here. And in utilities, this is like the MSI library kind of function, but it's got a bit more feature set currently, and it will have a lot more in the future as we kind of dig into this more detail. So in here, you've got all of the standard fittings, all of standard pipes, all of standard structures. And if you go into things like arch pipes, for example, when you click on an arch pipe, we don't draw it as a custom shape and build it. We just put in the parameters of the custom shape. So you put in the 3 radiuses, the spring rise value, the wall thickness, and it will then calculate the shape automatically on the fly for you. Same applies to things like box culverts. When we do box culverts can be a single, a double, a triple, or quadruple. When you define them, you just tell it how many openings you want, and you give it the parameters of the box, and it will then calculate. So again, no need to draw it as a custom shape. You just define the basic parameters. Same thing with elliptical pipes. Elliptical pipes have the major axis, minor axis settings, and the wall thickness, so you can define those as you want. And once you've defined the basics, if you want to create a new one, it's just a matter of picking one, copying it, and changing the parameters, and everything else will be the same. So you've got most of the materials and stuff in here. So things like what the materials of the pipe are made up of. So here you can see material is made up of reinforced concrete for this particular one because it's an RCP pipe. But again, you can choose how you set these up. But again, most of the basics that you need for most jobs are already built into this, and we've put most of the size in here. We're still working on an improved block library for things like end walls, head walls, and some of the other structures, and we're planning to do a lot more with that in 2026. So you can expect this to become more BIM-like, and we're hoping to move this towards IFC objects in 2026. So hopefully you'll see some more changes around this coming up in the new year. But you build your library up here for your utilities. And again, we can featureize line work. And we say this line is a 30-inch pipe, this line's a 12-inch pipe, this line's an 18-inch pipe, and it will update it. These boxes are manholes, these boxes are drainage inlets, and it will featureize them and turn them into real objects and make the storm utility networks directly from those. So once you've defined your features and your utilities, then you get into the drawing functions. And the drawing functions, it says draw features, but it really should say create features. Create features, you can create them from existing line work. You can use existing lines and track a region to kind of create an area. feature. You can use existing lines to make a length feature. And there's a bunch of features built into this. So I just want to show you a few of these quickly. So in the feature mode, you can tell it, you can filter down the list so you're not working with the full list. So I'm only working with finished grade features right now. And then you can say, what type of feature are you working with? I'm only working with area features right now. And then it says, which area feature do you want to work with? So it only shows you now anything that's tagged as an area feature. This is a searchable field, so you can just type in like building, and it will then reduce this down to building pads in the list. Or you can type in, if you know you're using BG pad or BGP is part of it, then as you do that, it's going to pull up the same list. If I clear that list and do it again, so just type BGP now, you can see that it's going to reduce it down to building pad because BGP is found here, and it shows you in the feature where it's found that match of the text. And you can put in multiple searches in here. So if you're looking for, let's say, if I go back into here and say, I'm looking for FG space and EX space and EROS space. As I do that, it's going to form a list using all of these wildcards in here. Now, of course, it's not going to find these because I've got finished grade selected up here, but you can put as many wildcards into here as you want with space separating between them, and it will find you anything that matches any of those elements as you go. Okay, so we're going to pick building pad here for now. And then here you can see it says the materials. It's got 10 inches and 6 inches of material, but if I don't like it, I can change that to 8 at runtime and allow me to just change it. If you're just doing simple subgrade adjustments, then just put in one material layer of a thickness for each feature. Then you can just type in the subgrade adjustment. Or if you just want to just call them all subgrade adjustments, just call them subgrade adjustments, and you've only got one feature to work with. So if you want it to be really simple, you can make it dead simple. If you want it to be somewhat sophisticated, then you can do that and have a full feature library. But when you've built the library, then you don't have to do it again and again and again. It's just there all the time. So now we can say we have different options of creating features. So we can, in this first one, I'm going to say assign features. And all I do is I grab these and say apply. At that point, now it's turned those into the feature. And if I go to the building pads layer, you can see these are all being shaded in. They've all been put onto the right layer. If I click on one of these guys, you'll see that it's got these attributes. So it's got the attributes of the thickness of the material 1 and the thickness of material 2, and it's got the quantity of material 1 and quantity of material 2 defined. It's got a phase number built into this. So if you don't like the phasing that it gave it, so it gave everything phase 1 here. So these aren't all phase 1. Then I could go down here to this edit feature function, which is new this week. And in here I can say, I'm looking for the feature attribute called phase, and I want to call these phase 1, and I want to pick these guys and hit apply. So these are all now phase 1 objects, and I can then say change them to phase 2, and I want to pick, let's say, these guys as phase 2, and then I want to pick this as phase 3, and I want to pick all of these guys and this one. I want to make that phase 3. And so now when I click on any of these guys, you can see that they've got the right phase numbers associated with them. So you can add phases to the objects by assigning them like this. Or later on, I could put boundaries around the phases when I come around to my earthworks report and give them phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 boundaries, and it will then group these based on which boundaries they fall inside when I come around to the earthworks reporting later on. So you can do phasing and stuff like that in different ways depending on the kind of featureization that you're trying to do. So that's one way of creating features from existing objects. So this can create, line features, point features, manhole features, pipe features, whatever you're trying to do here. The second one is copy. Copy allows you to say, well, rather than using the line work that I was given, make a copy of the line work and put it on the layer and then make it features, and then the original CAD data is left behind. So you don't end up losing the original CAD data as you make it into features. You've got the original CAD data plus you've got the features that you've defined. So that's really all copy does, is it just makes a copy of the data onto the layer that you've targeted for your feature and then makes it into features. Then you get into the draw mode. Draw mode is basically, I just want to draw a feature. So again, when you draw it, you can draw it either as the object was defined. So the building pad was a 3D feature. So if I do that, it knows that it's a single elevation feature. So now when I say I want to draw it, I can just draw it. It asks me for an elevation on the first point. And then after that, as I click it, it knows it's a closed polygon because a building pad is a closed area. So it knows that. It knows what layer to put it on. it knows it only asks me for an elevation on the first point. And when I hit N, that now created me the building pad. And again, if I click on that now, it's a building pad and it's got all the materials on it. Now, the nice thing about this is that this is linked to the properties here. So if I change the thickness of the material, the quantity will change. So if I change this to 12 inches thick, watch the quantity in the next line. So you can see that quantity just updated automatically. So as you make modifications to the thickness, or if you make modifications to the area, watch it again. By changing the area, the quantity just updated automatically for me. And at the same time, it's building you the reports of those objects directly in the report tab. So I go to area features, all the building pads have just featurized, are all in here. And hopefully the last one I created will be the large ones, right? And it's got the concrete and aggregate quantities associated with that. It's got the cubic yard. This is where you're linking this now to HCSS. To go back to the question that somebody asked earlier on, is if we got this report, then we know the unit is cubic yards for both the concrete and the aggregate, and we know the feature is called building pad. We know it's an area-based feature, and all the data that's associated with that is listed here. These are the thickness of the materials. This is the phase number that the building is in. Just notice that that's not updating either, so that needs to be fixed. But there's just little things like this. We're still working through a couple of little warts where data updates doesn't get updated into the report or whatever, and we need to make those kind of last little tweaks here. But we're getting to the point now where all the feature data is being reported. And then once you're happy with everything, if you run the refresh report function here, it goes off and builds you a new report. And in that report, it will give you the consolidated report at the start, which aggregates all the information for all the types of features into one big report. It also gives you things like a material summary. So all the materials that you've used on here will be summarized in the material report. If you've done utilities, you'll get a utility report. And then underneath each of the object types, you get the individual reports as well. So here you can see it's just on areas so far, and there's your area report accordingly. So the reporting is sort of dynamically linked to the objects, and the objects are dynamically linked to the properties, and properties dynamically linked to the report. So now you can see the phases have all updated in this spreadsheet as I've refreshed the report here. Okay, so the report generates, as you create the objects, they were all created with phase 1. And then as I came back and I reassigned the phases to these buildings, then by doing that, when I hit the refresh report, it will update with all the latest information for you. So you should always hit the refresh report before you're finished. And again, this is a spreadsheet. So in the spreadsheet, you can go into the header bar here and then just say, I want a data filter. So you can say data filter, just like a normal spreadsheet. And then that will put the searches on here, and then you can filter this down just using the search controls of a normal spreadsheet. So keeping going here, this is how you kind of can create features by drawing it. Let's just draw a couple of other types of features. So if I pick up here, I want to pick length width features here now, just to show you that one. This is for Dan. And in the feature manager here, I can say what kind of feature I'm looking to pick with. So I've named these. So this is a finished grade pavement lane for asphalt, or finished grade pavement lane for gravel. And I've got another one here for concrete somewhere, I thought. Yeah, pavement concrete, this one. And in here you can see it's got concrete aggregate, then it's got rebar, tie bar, and dowel baskets associated with it. And once you get into this, then you can say, well, now I want to draw the feature. And when you're drawing it, you can just draw it freehand. And in here you can define whether you're going to draw it with line and width or line with offset. So you can say I've got a line and 12 foot wide, or I've got a center line and 6 foot left and right offsets, and you can define whether you're picking the center line, the left side or the right side, and then you can put in the offsets that you want for the method that you've drawn it. So I'm going to go line with width. I'm going to say I'm going to draw a center line and say it's a 12 foot width road. And at this point here, now you can get into whether it's a 2D or 3D. So I just want to do a 2D takeoff this time. And now I'm going to start just drawing the feature. So as I draw the feature, you can see it's drawing it as a polygon. If I hold the control key down in the way that Smart Draw works, you now get a curve. If I keep holding the control key down, it gives you a continuously smooth curve. And then you can turn it off. It goes back to straight lines again. And when I hit the N key, it finishes the feature, draws it, puts it on the right layer. So if I just isolate the layers here a minute, there's my feature. And there's all my quantities, including my rebar quantities. And the rebar definition is defined as part of the attributes. So when we go into the attributes here, you can see that for rebar, I've said it's 18-inch spaced, longitudinal spacing is 18, I want one layer of rebar. I want the rebar to be 2 inches from the edges. I want it to be 40-foot length of rebars with a splice overlap of 30 inches. And I want the rebar weight to be 0.167 pounds per linear foot. And then the tie bars, I want those to be spaced 36 feet. In this case, I've got here, it says tie bar adjacent lane. So this is what dictates whether you put tie bars on it. So if I say it's got one adjacent lane, it means on one side I'm going to draw another lane, but on the other side it's open, so I don't need tie bars on that side. So by putting in the properties here as you draw it, or before you draw it, it will calculate the number of tie bars it needs, and that's how you get to the number of tie bars over here. If I can find it, material 4. Yeah, so here it's saying rebar, dowel basket, tie bars. So we need 908 tie bars along the edge of this road to build that. Okay, and in terms of dowel baskets, we need 109 dowel baskets to build this out for the joints for the concrete pavement that we're working with. So you put in all the parameters, and once you've done that, it will then calculate all the quantities directly on the object. And again, if I go to the report and I go to the length width features here now, I can find them. Length width area, length width features. So in here now you've got the full report of all the materials that go into that object there. And if I hit the refresh report button again and I go to the material quantities, once that comes back,
while we're waiting on that, Alan, Darren was wondering if he needs the utility module to be able to do the utility functionality in this.
No, not at all. So any of the feature set that we're showing here is using just the native objects of TBC. It doesn't need any of the utility object model functionality at all. So you don't have to pay for the utility module to use this. You can just use our tools directly. Does that answer your question, Darren? Okay, so in here you've got the quantities now, and here now you can see you've got the concrete reinforcement rebar. It tells you how many pounds of steel we need. Tie bars, it tells you how many tie bars you need and how many concrete reinforcement dowel baskets you need to build that pavement section. So as we build these features, you've got these different methods of drawing. So the drawing method, the next one is track, and the track is good for if you do things like, I haven't drawn all these lines together, so I'm just going to draw something over here in right field, just quickly and dirty, quick and dirty here. So I'm going to draw a polyline. Let's say this is the road going across the top, and then this is the road coming around under here. And let's say you've got another one coming around like this. And then let's say we've got the road center line like this. And let's say we've got a road center line coming up here. And let's say close that. So now if I go to the track mode here and I say I want to pick up an area feature here now. So I'm going to finish the grade. I'm going to go area features. And in this case, I'm going to say feature I want to work with is a road pavement area of asphalt. And in this case, then I'm going to track it using existing objects. And then it says, which line do you want to work with? So you pick this line. Then it says, where along that line do you want to use? So I'm going to say from here to here. And at that point, then it says, do you want to draw some additional coordinate points? You see the cursor is moving directly in the dialog. So here I can say I want to draw that point there, but then I want to join it to this line. So I hit the J key on my keyboard as I hover over this line. Then it will pick that line. I can say I want to join it from there to there. And then I want to join it to there. And I hit the J key again and hover over that line from here up to here. And then join to here. And then new line. And it now creates the pavement area. And that pavement area now has the asphalt quantities associated with it on the polygon. So here again, all the asphalt quantities associated with that for the different materials that are in that. And that material list can have asphalt, 2 layers of asphalt, aggregate. It could have a geomembrane, a tack coat. It could have a subgrade, stabilization, lime stabilization, surface treatment at the bottom. And each one of those gets quantified directly. And again, if I go to the report and I go across to the area features, again, there's my road asphalt pavement directly calculated, quantified. Everything is in the right units directly in here. And again, this is all something you can then tie into working directly with HCSS or bid to win. Okay, so this is the kind of methodology that we're trying to work through. Is instead of thinking about lines on layers with colors and line styles and names become a feature, is to find the feature and then assign the feature, create the feature, draw the feature, track the feature, whatever. If you're doing things like tracking regions, so if you've got, you know, lines that make up an area, let's say you've got a parking lot, and let's say you've got a road across the top here, and then you've got an entryway here, and then let's say you've got another road coming across like this, a sidewalk or something going around the parking lot here, and then let's say you've got a sidewalk or a curb line that comes across here, and another, you know, another area that comes up here, and that's your parking lot. And you want to make that into an area, then you need to track that region. So to track the region, you just come in here and you go to region track, and then you can say, I want to track the region. In this case, there's no holes in it, but let's say there was an island in the middle of it. Let's say there's a rectangle in the middle of it, which is an island. Draw on the wrong layer there. Let's put it on the same layer here. So now if I want to, I can then track region with interior holes. And I can also put in an offset in here. So when you do the track region, you want the region to be slightly offset from the outside so that your features don't match completely along the same edge lines. Otherwise, you end up with overlap. So we put in the track offset into all of these functions. We could put in a closure tolerance. If there's a slight gap between all these lines, it will close it out for you. And then you can just say, pick the objects that you want to use. And then you tell it you want the region that you want. And that will then build you that region. And again, that's now been turned into that road pavement feature. I should have changed it to a parking lot, but again, I've now got the quantities associated with that, and that's now calculated out. So regions are much easier to use. You can use the standard line work that's already there. And again, things like if you're doing just trying to find the edge of a model, let's say you've got a bunch of contours or something like that that you're working with for existing grade. I'm just going to draw a few here just to kind of give you an idea. Let's say that was your original ground model and you want to track this area around here, then you would just say, instead of using region track, you go to shrink wrap. And in shrink wrap, you can then say, well, I want to shrink wrap these objects here. And then you can specify an offset again with this. So you can say, I want to offset outside or inside that line. And then you can use this arrow key here, and it will dynamically adjust the shrink wrap until you get what you want. So you can just minimize that down until it's following the boundary as you want it. Of course, you'll never get it perfect. That one's not bad, actually. That's pretty close to perfect right there. And when you're happy, you can then decide what feature it is you're creating and then hit the apply key. And now it's made that into an asphalt pavement area. So that could be your grading limits boundary or whatever. So you then pick your feature for grading limits and then apply it. So you've got all the drawing functions that you need to be able to create objects from other objects. Then you've got the ability to edit the feature after the fact to create the things like the stationing for cross sections, or things like the phasing numbers for the phase number for the features as you go through this and build it. So you're basically going to use this tool for featureize everything and doing all of your two-dimensional takeoff quantities in the project. So this is giving you everything as a running report as you go. This report can again be floated and put on a second screen so you can watch it as you're working if you want to. And then all you do is you hit the refresh report when you're finished, and that's giving you your 2D takeoff or 2.5D takeoff, I call it, from this. Now these lines can have elevations, they can be 3D, and then you can go off and use these same lines to build your surface models. And once you've got your surface models, you can then move into full takeoff, right? So any questions on that so far? What do you think? Do you like this so far? You got any comments? Okay. All right. So this is kind of where we then make a transition from here, from like doing 2D takeoff, where we're either using extracted data or we're tracing over a PDF to kind of calculate the 2D quantities. And those 2D quantities can be, you know, planimetric areas, or this is an example job that I looked at over the last couple of days here as another test exercise, but I also did it as a reference to a customer request last week, where they were looking at a road job, and this road job is a bridge being replaced, but they're building a road and a secondary bridge to kind of move the traffic during the bridge refurbishment. So this was a multi-phase project. So this is an example where I imported the PDF cross-section sheets just using PDF Manager, laid them out, and then I just basically used the data extraction to pull out the features, the line work, and I used the same feature manager to kind of create these regions of color on the cross section. So this is phase 1 rock fill. This is phase 1 fill. This is phase 1 cut. And then over here, the embankment here in the MSE wall is phase 2. So the phase 2 is built out with the MSE wall and the fill in this area. And then in phase 4, phase 3 is when they build the new bridge. And then phase 4, they come back and they cut back. They remove the MSE wall. They cut this back to standard embankment. So you've got fill here and then fill up here. And then you end up calculating the phase 4 quantity. So, and in a cross-section view, the nice thing about the cross-sections is they do tell you the phases. You can see clearly in the original PDF what the intent is. And you can build these areas out and again use Feature Manager. And in Feature Manager, in this particular example, we didn't have it when we started this process last week, but we've added another function into the feature definitions, which is a cross-sectional area feature. And a cross-sectional area feature knows that it could have exaggeration, and it knows it has a station value. So when I click on one of these features now, it has a station record, it has a phase number, and it has the materials associated with it, right? So this is this is phase 2 fill. So this is this area in behind the retaining wall here. So you can build out the areas, and then as you go into the report, again in the report, if I just hit the refresh report function here just to update it, this will take a few seconds. There's about, I think, 800 areas in this now. And so in this case, you've got all the areas of the MSE wall, you've got the areas of phase 1 cut, that's these little areas up here. You've got all the areas of phase 1 fill, that's these blue areas here. So again, we color code this to match up with the color coding of the feature. Then we get down to the bottom, we've got the rock cuts at the bottom. So these are the rock fills at the bottom here for phase 1. Then there's rock fill over here for phase 2. And then further down, there's there's 2 areas of rock here and here. And each one has its own color, so you can see which one is which from the report. So this is all again generated as you generate the features, and all these features directly have the station value associated with them because we've assigned that as one of the attributes. And again, you can use the edit function to add the station values to these now. So with the cross-sectional feature that we've just added and the edit tool, we just took about 50% of the time it took me to build this. This data set took me about an hour and a half to build, and I can probably take it down by 50%. Now we've got a cross-sectional feature that has this and the editing feature, which allows me just to sort of go in Smart Feature in the draw mode. I just change this to edit mode. And then if I want to change things like the station, now I can just say I want to change the station attribute for all these records right here. And I can just type in the attribute, edit it. So here I would just put in the edit, like this would be station 114550. And then pick the attribute, pick the features that you want to set that to and hit the apply button, and it would then apply it. And then if you click on these, they would have the station record. So it's one of the things you don't have to worry too much about the stationing while you're doing it. You can if you want to, because the attribute's reported to you, so you can actually edit it there. But you can just come back in afterwards and add the attributes after the fact. And the nice thing about doing all this in 2D is if you then add the alignment, you can then use the standard TBC cross-section flip routine to flip this up into 3D. And then you end up with a 3D model that looks something like this. So I built all this out, and in this process, you realize that the bridge actually starts where this line is right here, but there's a whole chunk missing in this area, and there's a whole chunk missing in this area. So I started to rebuild the model for these areas going from here, but you could just copy the cross-sectional data from the last cross-section up one more, put it in with a new station value on both ends on the approach and the departure for that road, and then have that calculate the quantities for you. So you can make adjustments to that in the spreadsheet rather than having to do the whole model thing to do it. But the nice thing about the model is even if you turn the surfaces off, once you flip all that line work into 3D, you can actually see how that data is coming together, and you can instantly see that there's a gap between where the bridge is meant to be and where the ends of the last cross sections are. So you can work out there's some cross-sectional volume data that's missing in here to get the quantities that I need. And then you can build in the line work and then build up your phase models and then run your true surface-to-surface quantities if you want to do that. But you don't need to do it because the quantities are there from the feature takeoff kind of approach. So that's kind of where we're heading with things like Smart Feature for cross-section takeoff, and also for 3D model building, and also 2D takeoff, working off PDF files or working from imported CAD files. Any questions so far? All right. Okay, so this is Smart Feature. So once you've done I'm going to go back to Morrison Farms project here now and just show you the takeoff process here and the way we're working with this. This is, I think, going to be the area of biggest improvement over the next 3 months, where as we get more into this and as we get this more and more refined. Ann and I are working on this every day right now to kind of get the takeoff functionality working for the release. And the takeoff functionality is pretty good already, but it can be improved significantly, I think, going forward. But again, we've got the basic building blocks in place now to be able to do whatever we want. So in this case, we've done our 2D feature takeoff and we've built our 3D finished grade model. And so we look at the 3D view here. We've got our line work in 3D. If I just turn this off a second and let's go down to the surfaces here for a minute. I've already got more surfaces in here than I need, but let's go to the finished grade design. Finished grade design surface, this one. So that's the original, the finished grade surface. We've also got our existing surface, and this is just built from the line work. So we build the line work, we build a surface. This isn't a takeoff surface. This isn't using categorization to build the surfaces. This is just saying, grab these lines, make a surface out of it using our smart model tool or using the standard TPC surface modeling functions. There will be more to that coming in the future, I'm sure. But in terms of building the surfaces, it's just normal surfaces. So you can have as many finished grades as you want, revision 1, revision 2, revision 3. You can have as many existing grades as you want. If you fly the site and you get given the original contours in a PDF, you could build the first version from the contours, fly the site and build a second version from the drone flight or whatever you might need to do. So again, we're trying to break away from standard TBC takeoff that says you get one existing, one design, one takeoff report, and you're done. You can run a takeoff report between any surfaces you want. You can apply whatever features to whatever surfaces you want. You can create as many subgrade surfaces as you want, and it's totally under your control. And when we build it, all the line work that gets used to build the subgrade surface is put on some takeoff lines layers, which are put into the site data layer. So you'll see when we open up the site data features here, you'll see that there's these TO lines, layers. These TO lines are the lines that get used to build the subgrade model. So if you want to go in and edit the subgrade models or delete a line from a subgrade model or add a line to a subgrade model, you've got all the raw data that built that subgrade model and you can modify it and edit. So if you're doing overbuilds or over X's to the subgrade, you can apply those directly to the subgrade line work and then add it to your model, and now you've got a subgrade adjusted with overbuilds inbuilt. So this gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of building the surfaces, building the subgrade models, and turning it into whatever takeoff calculations you want to do. So once we get into takeoff, we then move into takeoff, and takeoff is our kind of process. The thinking here is that you have takeoff on existing ground, you have takeoff on finished grade, and then you run your earthwork report, and then you look at your quantities. That's the kind of work process that we're thinking about. So in here, and we're still, I had a meeting this morning with Ann, the developer who's working on this, and we're going to make one more modification to the way we're calculating these. We really don't see the difference between a topsoil stripping and a demolition on existing. They're basically subgrade adjustments to existing. So why treat them as different? We know the topsoil is in the topsoil strip, and that's all we need to know. Because when we do a topsoil balance, we know there's strip and we know there's replacement, and we can do the balance between the two and generate a report just purely on the material. We don't need to treat them separately. So we're going to get rid of some of these process steps that I'm going to show you here. We don't need to build topsoil strip surface. We don't need a specific build demolition. We're just going to build an adjusted existing ground surface, and you can apply demolition and topsoil all at the same time. And you define those just as normal features. So you define an area where you've got topsoil strip, you tell it how thick the strip is, you've got an area you're going to demolish, and you tell it how thick the demolition is. And once you've done that, you can then just say, from my existing, using these features, build me my subgrade adjusted existing. So in here, you would just say build topsoil strip in this case. You tell it which features you want to use. So I'm going to use the topsoil strip in this case. Then you say, what do you want to call it? So you would give it a name like EX strip. And then once you've done that, you tell it which is your reference surface. So you say it's my existing surface. And then you can tell it what your material is, the topsoil. At that point, you say build surfaces, and it will then build you the subgrade adjusted existing, right? And that would apply to both demolition and existing in this case. Once you've built your subgrade adjusted existing, you then go to finished grade, and you do the same thing again. You say process, I'm going to build a subgrade model, and it says which features do you want to apply. You can pick all of them. And then you can say subgrade settings. What do you want to call this surface? I'm going to call it FG SG adjusted. I'll call it SG Adjust 2. And you tell it which is your reference surface. I'm going to pick my design surface, and then which materials do you want to apply. We are just adding one more into here, which is bottom of subgrade will be the first one that you can pick. In this case, I'm just going to pick everything and then say OK, and then say build surfaces, and it goes off and builds you all the surfaces that it needs, and it builds you the line work on those TO layers for that particular surface so that you can always extend it and modify it if you want to later on. And this process, you'll see that it's got these flags, and the reason it's got the flags is because we've incorporated currently, this is a little bug we're going to fix today, is we're including this line in the road model, which is the bottom of concrete. It shouldn't be included because it's too close to the top and the bottom. So if I just remove that line from the model by deleting it, it would get rid of it, and then the flags would disappear accordingly, right? So you can just delete it in this case. And the same applies to these building pads. It's got the bottom of concrete in the building pads as well as the bottom of subgrade. And again, for doing the earthworks quantities, we don't need the individual line work in between the top and bottom of each subgrade. So we're getting rid of that. That will be taken out today. And hopefully then our data will have no flags in it whatsoever for the subgrade models. But anyway, you can see the subgrade model is now getting built out. This is all your curb adjustment, your sidewalk adjustment, your pavement adjustments, etc. And it's pretty clean as a surface. And we're doing some pretty smart stuff in terms of when you've got things like topsoil stripping or topsoil replacement, and you've got the building pads cut in, we're building the boundary normally has to come around the outside and then cut in, then cut back out again, but we're doing some smart stuff in there so you don't have the cut-ins and cut-outs, which means you don't get some problems with the surfaces that you would do with normal TPC. So again, we're making this a lot quicker and a lot faster to build out the subgrade adjusted models. And these, again, if this was a finished model working with true finished grades, this would be a finished model that you could put on a machine. This isn't just a takeoff model. This is a full-blown 3D model that you can use for machine control in here. Now, once you've done that, once you've built your surfaces for finished grade and existing, then you would go to the earthwork reports. And this is the last piece that we're kind of finishing up this week. Hopefully this is the last piece that we're waiting for before we can actually release the stuff. And in here, you can tell it what your existing surface is. I'm using the existing topsoil adjusted, and the final is the finished grade subgrade adjusted. And at this point, you can tell it which boundaries you want to use. So if you've got grading limits boundaries, for example, or phase boundaries that you want to use, I'm just going to turn off everything here for a minute. And let's turn on my phase boundaries here. Go to the plan view for a second. So turn off my contours. Yeah, so these are my phase boundaries, these purple boundary lines. So I've created a boundary like this one. There's a boundary around the pond. The other one, that one's a boundary around the pond, and I've built a boundary up here, and then I've built a boundary for the right-of-way area for the roads. This one here, let's do that one. So those are my boundaries that I want to subdivide the quantities into. So I'm going to pick those 4 boundaries. And then on top of that, you can also tell it, out of the features that you said you wanted sub-quantities for, which ones do you really want to calculate the sub-quantities for? So it flags all the ones that you checked as a feature that says you want to do the subgrade or the earthwork sub-quantities underneath each one of these. And each one of these will become a line item its own. So I said all the building pads, I said the sidewalks, the pavement areas, the pond area, I wanted those as areas reported individually. So if they're getting reported already individually, you don't need to create a second phase boundary for them. If you do that, it will subdivide the quantity. So I put a phase 1 up here, phase 2 around here, and then a phase 3 for the pond and a phase 4 for the right-of-way, just so I've got it broken into 4 quantity areas. Once you've defined that, you can decide whether you want to do the calculations using grids or triangles. And if you do grids, what grid size do you want to use? I'm just going to use grid for speed here and run the earthwork report. And in a couple of seconds, it's doing the full earthwork report for me now. And again, there's a little bit of refinement to go on in here in the way we're organizing the data, but hopefully you'll see where this is heading. But in here now, you've got a color-coded report. And for each feature, this is my phase boundaries up here. And this will be broken out into phases and groups and stuff like that. So it'll be more structured by the time we're finished by the end of the week here. But here you've got all the quantities for the earthwork. So for each of those features, they're all broken out individually as individual quantities. There'll be totals for the whole site, total by phase, and then total of all the individual areas within each phase. So you'll get like phase 1 building 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then remaining area and the total area. And then you get the second phase for all the buildings, and then the third phase for the pond, and then the fourth phase for the right of way. And it will be broken into 4 groups. There is a consolidate button here, but it doesn't work yet. But you can see it's breaking it into the boundaries. We just haven't got all the boundaries detailed in here properly yet. But that's work that Anne's finishing up, and hopefully we'll have that done by the end of the week here for the release. So anyway, this is our kind of takeoff report. And again, it's totally flexible. You can run whatever surface calculations you want here, and then assign whatever number of boundaries you want and whatever number of features you want applied to that in the calculations, and it will break it all out for you as you want. And it's all in a nicely formatted spreadsheet, so it's 100% compatible with going into things like HCSS, bid to win, hard dollar, innate, whatever, going forward into the future. And we think anybody can read these spreadsheets already, but if there's a dedicated need for an HCSS report, it's not a big deal for us to add an HCSS tab on here, or a bid to win tab or something like that you can enable. And if you do that, then the quantities would just get reported that way as part of the reporting. And that's kind of our goal with this, is to create something like this. Now, if you want to send this to somebody as an Excel report, all you do is you do File, Save As, and then save it as an Excel file. It goes straight out as an Excel file. You can open it up in Excel and do whatever you might want to do. So if you're looking at that cross-section reporting, just to show you kind of what I did for the customer I was talking to last week, I have to find it now. Can you still hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now. You're back.
Cut out. Second now. This was basically what I did with this one, is I took the data from the report, like this was the raw data. I just copied it into Excel. I did it in Excel because I had a couple of things I wanted to do differently in here that I didn't want to do in our tool. But I was just trying to mock up what kind of reporting we might want to do from here. And again, I'm interested in getting your feedback around this going forward. Is I took this data and I used a pivot table function to build a pivot table, which is this data here. So I just used a pivot table, and that groups all your phase 1 cuts together, all your phase 1 fills, and organizes it by station and by material. So these are your materials across the top, these are your stations down the side, and then we've got the aggregated data in here. Then all I did was I copied that data into a third sheet, and that's this first data. I color coded it, and then said, okay, well, now I want to calculate the station deltas between the stations. I then wanted to calculate my end section area volumes, which is just take the area of this one and the area of this one, add them together, divide it by 2, multiply it by 50, and divide it by 27. That's kind of how you get to the cubic yards of phase 1 cut. So I did that for each of the station ranges for each of the materials. So this is what this data is in here. And then over here, I then did the accumulated numbers, which gives us the ability to do from there the mass haul diagram. So this is our accumulation of cut under the phase 1, accumulation of fill, and the balance of cut and fill accumulation, and that's the chart that comes out of that. So you've got the red is the cut, which is above the grade, 0, and the blue is the fill, and then you've got the balance line between the two, between it. And I built these as different types of reports just to kind of show and the developer how we would derive the cut fill mass haul diagrams for this kind of data for a road job, and just kind of the calculations and stuff that we need to do to make that work. But in here, this is just some examples of reports, and this took me about 5 minutes to do from the generation of the report that we generated from the takeoff quantities of those cross sections. So take the cross sections, build the report, open it in our tool in SmartPane or something, copy and paste the data and build a pivot table, use the pivot table to create the raw data, and then do the calculations. And again, my goal isn't that you do it this way. My goal is that we're going to give you this, as I said, the tools inside our application. But in the meantime, the reports are structured so easily that we can just take it into any Excel spreadsheet and do whatever calculations we want directly on it, or we can do it directly in our report. The only thing about our report is it's getting refreshed. So I would copy and paste it into a blank spreadsheet using SmartPane, and then do all this kind of work in SmartPane on the data. The only problem with that is it's not dynamically linked. So until we get the reporting with the columns in it that gives us the deltas between the stations and the end section area quantities, you're going to have to kind of do it in an Excel spreadsheet independent of the raw data. And if you have to rerun the report, you'll have to rerun the numbers again. Just copy and paste them across and rerun it. But it gives you an idea of where we can take this going forward. The power of the spreadsheet directly in our tool, linked directly to the graphics database, is a huge benefit to people in terms of the way we work. Okay, so that's kind of smart feature, smart takeoff, and where we're going. Those tools, and those will all be pretty much done by the end of this week. What I want to show you last is things like the Smart Profile, Smart Plot tool. I just want to pick up something that looks kind of good to look at. Let's pick all the line work on here for a minute. Turn off the phase boundaries. We don't need those for now. And let's say we want to create a drawing of this original sheet, but with this area inside it. So if we have the original sheet boundary, which is in the site data group, so I turn on the site data sheet boundaries here. Images, this one. So this is a boundary that I want to use to produce a plot sheet. Then we can use our smart plot function, which is another big new feature that's coming in this release to make it easy for you to produce drawings. And in here, I had the happy job of building about 60 templates, different templates for different paper sizes for the US market. So we built 3 different templates. We built what we call a cream template, a gray template, and a traditional template. And you can turn them all on, or you can decide which one you want to use of those 3. So if you want to go with a traditional template, then you can have ones with a horizontal title box, which means the title box is along the bottom. Or if you prefer, you can go with ones with the title box up the side. So depending on how you want to structure these. And then we have ANSI paper sizes and Arch paper sizes, and we'll shortly be adding. We've done the ISOs for the standard ANSI and ISO, ANSI and Arch sizes for the Canadian market. We haven't done the ISO pages yet. We're planning to do that for the European and rest of the world market over the next couple of weeks here, and then we'll do an update to the commands with that template edition shortly. But in here, you can choose which templates you want to use. And then once you've decided that, you can choose whether you want to work in landscape or portrait. And so once you've defined all these things, you can then say which sheet size you want to work with. So I'm going to go with an 11 by 17 sheet. And then you get these settings that allow you to control whether you want to put north arrows and scale bars on the drawing, whether you want to rotate the Dynaview so it fits on the drawing sheet directly or not. You can also decide whether you want a grid on the drawing or not. So you can pick the grid style and define the intervals if you want to do that. And this is dynamically linked, so you can change it after the fact. And then here we've also added this what we call sheet style, and the sheet styles are defined in RPS settings. And if I go down here to Smart Plot, the sheet styles basically you define, let's say if a cut fill map, you can define that you only want to use 70% of the drawing space because you want to keep 30% of it for a volume report or a 3D view or something like that. So you can define how you want to use the sheet. You can go 60-40, 70-30, 50-50, whatever you think is right. Or you can say, I want to go full sheet, and that's a full size sheet, and it's going to use the full available area of the drawing. And it takes away things like the title box and borders that we've defined in the template, so it knows the limit of the drawing area and how much space is available for that. And then further down here, you can also define which company logo you want to put on the drawing. You just drag and drop it into here, and it will put it on the drawings for you automatically. And if you want to use your own templates because you don't like ours for some reason, then you can create your own templates, and then you can tell it the offsets. Or it will do it automatically if you set it up the right way. But if it's not set up the right way, you can put in offsets in here to control how your template will work. And then for your grid style, you can define how your grids are going to work by default and the layers you want to put them on and stuff like that. But once you've defined that, and again, all of that's hard, we've hard-coded defaults in here, and then you can decide how you want to lay this out. So you can either say draw frame by paper size and ratio, and if you do that, you get to put a scale in to start off with, and then you can see how big that sheet will be at that scale, and you can increase or decrease it using the arrow key. So you can just say go up to 110, and now it should fit, nicely over the top of that one, pretty much. Okay, so you can decide how you want to place it. Or if you don't want to use a frame of your own, you can say select a frame, and you can just pick a frame that exists. At that point, then it's going to work out how to fit that onto your drawing sheet in the available space. So it's going to scale it according to the available space on your drawing sheet. So you don't get to control the scale then, you just get to control the content on the sheet, and it will tell you what scale it calculated. And once you've chosen it, you then just hit the apply button. It will then load that template, put it in a drawing, in a sheet view, and lay it out for you. So here's my title box and borders. It fills out the title box with your logo, fills out the sheet numbering, which is automatically associated with that sheet style. It fills out the project details from your project settings. It puts in your company details at the bottom if you've got that in your template, and that's all set up through project settings. And then on top of that, it puts the grids on the drawing. So it's put the grids on here, and it's got 100-foot intervals. If I don't like the 100-foot, I could go to 200 feet and tab, and it will then adjust the grid to suit. So now that's a 200-foot grid on there. It also puts on the north arrow on here, and it puts a scale bar on here. And again, if you don't like the location for those, you can just unlock here, grab this, and then move it to where you want to place it. So you can just move it on the graphics here to where you think you want to put it. The same thing with the north arrow. You can grab that and move it into a bit of free space so it's sitting nicely on the drawing wherever you happen to want to put it. And once you've done that, you just then go to print. So you just hit the print button over here and go to print plan set, tell it which one you want to print the PDF, and you say, okay, at that point now it should be printing it to a PDF file. Hopefully it will open shortly. There's my PDF, all nicely for me, title box, borders, logo. It just takes a couple of clicks to get that to work. Everything else is built into this, and this isn't all stored in your project template. This is all loaded at runtime, so you don't have to worry about updating a project template with all our templates and stuff like that. It's all taken care of for you directly in the system. So this is SmartPlot, and SmartPlot has a number of different ways of laying out the sheets to scale. So here you can say draw frame by paper size and scale. That's going to allow you to set up a scaled drawing exactly to scale. Selecting a frame allows you to pick a frame that is already in existence. Capture screen basically says, if I've got a screen view, let's say I've got that on screen. Let's make this a bit narrower. So I've got that as my view, and I want to print just that. Then capture screen would be the way to do that. Hit the apply button, and it's going to work out how to fit whatever's in that drawing space onto your sheet view, and that's exactly how it's fitted it for you. And then again, you can just grab these guys and move them to where you want them on your drawing to see where you want to see fit. So that's the capture screen function. And then the draw frame is just basically the same kind of thing, but in this case you can say, well, I want to draw the frame from, let's say, from here down to here. At that point it shows you the frame. If you don't like it, you can just clip it inside a little bit, just like the normal rectangular clipping boundary. Just clip this back, open it up a little bit more, and then say apply. At that point, then it's now built that drawing sheet for you, and that's the new drawing sheet for that one. So again, extremely quick and easy ways of producing drawings. And if you're trying to follow a frame along a line, so if I'm going to say use a frame with scale, let's go back to 100 scale here and say I want to place it, but I want to place it along an alignment. Then as I'm doing that, I can basically hold the control key down, and when I hover over a line, it's going to rotate the drawing until it's parallel with that alignment at that particular point. So as I come along the line, you can see it's rotating the sheet according to that. If I come down here, now it's rotating the sheet in relationship to that alignment as I go. I'm holding the control key down to do that. And when you're happy with the orientation that you wanted, let's say that's the orientation I want, and you can move the sheet up to here, place it like that, and then press enter. And that will now build you a sheet of just that with a rotation on it according to what you've just asked it for, and puts the scale bar, north arrow and stuff on there as well. So it's extremely quick and easy to lay out drawing sheets and create profile drawings and stuff like that. And it works for plan view and profile view currently. In the longer term, we're going to add more functionality into this, as well as more advanced plotting functionality and stuff in the not distant future. So that's the sheet plotting stuff. And then lastly, the other piece that we've spent a lot of time on, and again, I want to congratulate Vitaly and our team on this one. So Win does a fantastic job of all the PDF stuff, which gives us an underpinning of a lot of things we're doing. Anne's been doing all the takeoff stuff, which is phenomenal. We've got Ben in the team now doing a lot of the UI stuff. And then we have Vitaly, who joined us last year. And Vitaly's doing a phenomenal job of some of these takeoff tools that we're starting to build. So like if we were given storm drainage, I gave Vitaly the kind of guideline of, I want to be able to turn these drawings into 3D objects directly without having to jump through all the hoops that we have to do in TBC today. And they could be for drainage profiles, it could be for vertical alignments for roads, It could be, retaining walls, whatever you happen to be given as profile drawings. We want to convert this data into 3D real world objects. So, and with these, if it's drainage pipes, I want to convert, the line work in this drawing into 3D pipe objects. So this data here, for example, I'll just open up the utilities here. So all these utility model objects in here, these were built totally without the utility functionality of TBC. We're just using the utility objects. So these are standard TBC manhole objects. These are standard TBC pipe objects. And in the longer term, we're hoping to move these up into IFC for BIM type work. But right now we said, let's get version 1 out using the standard TBC objects, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So as we build these objects out, we can define the objects as line work, or we can define the objects as 3D pipes. And when we do that through what we call featureization of the profile view. So we would start out with the profile drawings. We would then extract the profile data. So we end up with the profile data that we want to work with. And then once you've done that, you run the Smart Profile tool. And the Smart Profile tool allows you to calibrate each of these profile drawings to start off with. So you pick the profile that you want to calibrate. So in this case, I'm going to do SD1, which is this drawing right here. And to calibrate a drawing, you basically pick 2 locations here and here on the x-axis and tell it the stations of those. So this point here is 0, and this point here is 800. And then you do the same thing on here. You say 1020 and 1060, and that's what the calibrating rate here. And then it just does a check on the horizontal scale and the vertical scale, just to check this. This is exaggerated 10 to 1 in the vertical. Then once you've done that, then you can get into like the measurement function. And the measurement function allows you to measure single points. So when you click on a single point in that area, it will tell you the station elevation of that particular point. If you want to measure a distance, you can say measure a distance from here to here, and it will then give you the horizontal, vertical distance, and slope distance between them. So if you're measuring the distance between 2 points on a pipe, or between the inverts of 2 manholes or whatever, you can determine that easily enough. You can do things like a reference point distance, which is basically just saying, here's a reference point, here's the first point, and then here's the second point, and here's the third point. And each one of these measurements I make, I can hit save, and they go into the report tab of the command. So in the report tab, we're logging all of these measurements that get made, and they all get saved. If you hit the save button, they get saved, and you can then say show the saved measurements, and it will bring them back and display them to you. So this is kind of measurement tools. You've also got things like, under the measurement tools, you've also got things like running distance, which is just a continuous distance, area, which allows you to calculate a profile area, or you can do things like depth brackets, and then you can say you want to measure the depth bracket between existing and, let's say, the base of trench here, and it will then cut this into your depth brackets that you've defined in your RPS settings. So you can go into the Smart Profile settings here and find it. Smart Profile. And in here you get the ability to define the depth brackets and the color. So from 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15. And now it's going to do all the takeoff calculations directly for you. And again, if I hit the save button here, give it a name. So I'm going to call it DB1 for depth bracket 1, hit OK. At that point now, that just opened up in our report. And just trying to see here. There's my depth bracket report for that sort of pipe. So I've got these 3 segments of the pipe. They start at this station, end at this station. They've got a total length in that section, and it's telling you the total area also in that section of the profile at that point. So it's giving you all the depth bracket information for that particular area of the pipe, and it does it for the depth bracket 2 in the same way. So you've got this ability to do the measurements, and then you can say, well, I also want to create line work from this. And so for each profile, you can allocate a line in the plan view that this profile belongs to. So this profile happens to belong to a line that starts up here, comes to this manhole or this inlet, goes to this inlet, 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 inlet across here. And so once you've got the 2D line that represents that feature, you just select it here. And so then you can say, I want to create line work from the profile drawing along that line. So when you're in the create lines function, all you do is you just say, well, let's just pick all this line work here and say, I want to take away the borders here. I don't need that. And once I've selected it here, I can then just hit the apply button, and that apply button then generates the line work in 3D, which you can see now. This is the existing ground profile. And this is the design profile of the top between the finished grade design profile. So if I come up over here, you should see, if I do the one across this one, you'd see the road going across here. This is just design profile. And then you've got the pipe information. So the line work for the pipe was then created. So this is just a line work model. But if you want to, you can also go to the utilities creation here. And utilities creation, you can say, well, okay, instead of creating line work, I want to create actual pipe objects. So in this case, what you do is you then say, well, I want to pick a 30-inch or whatever this is, 18-inch pipe here. So you'd say 18-inch RCP circular pipe. So you come down here, circular pipe, and then you tell it which run it belongs to. And at that point, then you can say, okay, grab that line right here, and then grab this line right here. And those two pipes, and you hit the assign feature, and that then assigns this 18-inch pipe to it. So that when I say apply, it will then flip that data up in 3D against the source line, and all those become individual pipe elements. And that's how we created the structures directly in this particular example. So all these pipes and these structures were all built that way. You do the same thing for the structures when you're featurizing the data. You'd say, this here is a catch basin, this here is a catch basin, and you just have these rectangles in here, catch basin, and then on the next ones, you've got end walls and you've got manholes and stuff like that. So along here, you just characterize each of these profiles with these are concentric manholes or eccentric manholes. Once you've defined all those features in this list, then you just hit the apply button, and again, those will get flipped. It takes the rim and the invert, builds the manhole structure, and connects the pipes to the manhole structure directly. And if you've got the same manhole used in 2 or more runs, it will just ignore the duplicates. So it gets rid of those automatically and connects them to the one that already exists. So all of that stuff is taken care of to build out your utility network. So we've got it as far as building the pipes, the utilities, the structures, the fittings, and the next stage of the process between now and sort of January, February time is to build all the trench quantities and stuff like that for that from those calculations. So the next stage of the takeoff piece that we're working on is building the strata layers and boring logs, doing the over excavation for buildings and structures, doing overbuilds for things like extending subgrades out underneath existing features, and then adding the trench quantities for the pipes and utilities. And that's our kind of workload on Ann for the next 2 to 3 months probably. So we're hoping that we'll have all of that part of takeoff finished in the first quarter next year at some point. And we're hoping to go through some of it at our Power User Conference in January, as well as go through the whole training on this during our Power User Conference in training. So that's basically the highest, the most important things that we've been working on. But you're also going to find 100 other little bits and pieces that we've done in other commands. One example is reporting this create slope indicators function. This was written originally for drawing slope indicators on surfaces, so for graphics for drawing creation purposes. But we found a much bigger use for it in building linear lines from top of slope to bottom of slope on a regular slope, so that you calculate those lines in 3D and then you build a surface model out of it. So I'm just going to show you this very quickly, because this is a pretty important tool for anybody building surfaces on complicated jobs. I'm just going to do this on a metric job because I've got a good example data set in metric here to use. And this is we just made a few little changes in here. We've been using it this way for quite a while. We took on a new user a few weeks ago, and he does this a lot, but he was doing it all by hand, and he saw what we could do with this, and he came back and said, well, can you fix this, this, and this? This will make it a lot more usable. So we've done those things for him, and they'll be in this next release update. Just make this maximize a minute. Just need to get set here. Okay, so hopefully you can still hear me. My headset cuts in and out every so often, so hopefully you guys can still hear me okay. Can you hear me, Chris? You guys still hearing me?
We can, Alan.
You can, okay, good. All right. So yeah, so the slope indicators function, it's controlled by a set of RPS settings initially, and you basically come in here and say, how long do you want these lines to be? You just set these settings up. And once these are hard coded anyway, so you don't need to change these particularly. And then the customer said, well, I need to change these kind of regularly. So sometimes I want to put a single line on between two lines. Excuse me. And other times I want to calculate lines automatically between two lines as I go. So in here, so you put these on a layer. So I'm just going to put them on layer 0 for now. And then you can pick, in this case, I'm going to pick the alignment as my reference line. And then pick, let's say this is the toe of slope and this is the top of slope. And then this allows me to say, well, I want to create either single lines or multiple lines. So I'm going to go multiple, and I want them to be 10-foot spacings. And then you can basically say, where do you want to start? So, excuse me, I want to start here, and then basically move along. And let's say I want to finish here. So that created me line work. And if I look at that in 3D, if I can find where I did that right here, you can see that it's put those slope lines on between those two slopes. But what it also does is it also adds the override property here. So maximum segment length override allows you to subdivide these lines. So when you build a surface model out of it, it's going to subdivide these lines and form more regular triangles rather than long skinny triangles that go up and down the slope here. Excuse me, I'm just going to get a lozenge here. Been talking too much. So when we build a surface model out of these lines here, so if I just I'll just grab this data right here. So I make a surface out of it. Okay, so let's build a surface model of this. And you can see when I click on the surface here, you can see it's triangulated this more uniformly along here because it's using 10-foot increments along here. Because I said I wanted 10-foot spacings this way. So now these triangles are now in 10-foot by 10-foot squares. And that makes the surface much smoother. So when I contour that, you'll get much smoother contours. And when you export that to a machine, the machine's not going to get the same ripple effect that you would get if you had long skinny triangles between the top and the bottom of the slope. And again, you can control the spacing between the lines, and that controls the interval along the lines automatically, so that when you build a model out of it, you end up with much smoother surfaces as a result. And you can build this out extremely quickly along, a road between tops and bottoms of embankment. And so the sort of automatic mode in that was to create these lines at 20 feet intervals or 10-foot increments. But the single mode allows you to come back in again and just say, using the same strengths, you want to put additional lines in here. So you can just add additional lines where there's specific features that you want to link to, like if there's a break in slope or something like that, or a break in the slope line at a specific location, you can just kind of pick extra points to fill in the gaps and then add those back into your surface model. And now you've got more information where you need it and less information where you don't. So you could go with 20-foot increments and then 10-foots, or just individuals to fill in the gaps between them. And this is what this user was asking us for, was, can we make this a little bit more dynamic? Give me full control over this here without having to go to the settings, which means I've got it all in the UI now while I'm working. It just makes it a lot quicker to use. And they were great little request changes. So again, it wasn't much work for us to fix it. All the hard work's already been done by Win when he wrote it originally, and then was able to fix this in a couple of hours to make it even better than it is right now. So little tools like this, you're going to see a lot of improvements to Smart Edit, small improvements, Smart Edit, Smart Draw, Smart Elevate, are all continually to evolve as we go. So the big commands, going back to what we started at the start of the session here, is, PDF manager is where we start, or importing CAD. Then we go through the CAD cleanup type functions, layer controls, the sort of drawing, editing, elevating, making into features. And then beyond that, then turning it into models. And then once you've got the features and the models, you can do smart takeoff. You can go into volumes manager if you've got things like progress volumes to calculate. Then after that, you get into smart plot, and that's your process. So really, we've turned all these menus of TBC into really a single menu now, where you can do utilities, takeoff, modeling, editing, elevating, drawing, featureization, well, all of the functions, volume calculations, all now with less than 30 commands. And again, we're going to consolidate this even more going over the next 3 to 6 months. You're going to see even more changes and more improvements in the usability as Mel's changes start getting built into the tools. Now you're going to start seeing major workflow improvements and just structural improvements to the dialogues and stuff like that. And it's great to have another set of eyes working on this with me so that I can focus more on the marketing and sales and helping Trev and the team get out there and show it to you guys, but also have Mel kind of managing the changing and the morphing to make this even more usable than it is today. So we're really focused on the things. Some of you were, asked to do a survey recently. We got great response on the survey. Mel's putting all the results together on that. And the feedback we got was, yeah, we're doing the right stuff, but can you focus more on making it more usable for even more basic users or new users? Can you help with the sort of 2D takeoff type stuff? There are a lot of kind of just sort of general responses that we got. People understand what we're doing, but some of the commands maybe have too many settings. Can you get rid of some of the settings? So Mel's working on this Rockpile Assist to try to reduce the amount of settings. So the survey that we sent you, I want to thank you all for responding, for the ones of you who did. It's tremendous feedback for us, and it just confirms what we already believed in most cases. There were a few things that we learned from it, addition, but it did reinforce the need for us to kind of continue this process of improvement and continually to evolve. We've really moved very much from being a lot of tools company to a company that's now providing a complete solution with the takeoff stuff and all the modeling stuff we've been doing over the last couple of years. We really feel like now we've got a complete Rockpile takeoff data prep modeling solution. We still use the core functions of TBC to get data to and from the field. We're using all the core functions to import CAD data. We're not changing any of that. But it's really allowing us to focus on building out that toolkit that really helps you. So at this point, I'm going to stop and just kind of throw it open to questions. Happy to stay on the call here for another 10, 15 minutes to answer any questions if you have any, or any feedback that you might have. But if you could unmute your mics and then just talk freely about what you've seen and how you think it might help you going forward, I'd appreciate any kind of additional response that you have at this point. And you can expect to see most of this come out in the next, all of the stuff I've shown you here is releasable. So it's pretty much done. We just got a little bit of tweaking to do on a couple of reports, a couple of things we need to still finish up, but hopefully by the end of the week this week, we'll have it done and we can get it out. So if there's any questions, please ask them in here. Okay, so somebody asked a question. Marshall was asking a question about the MX4 mouse. So I don't know if you can see my mouse here. This is an MX4 mouse. So this is a new Logitech mouse. It came out about a month ago. We've now standardized on this. And the nice thing about this mouse is it's got the button on the side here is a squeeze pad. So you can squeeze the mouse as well as click buttons. And that can be programmed. And then you've got 3 programmable buttons up here. And those buttons can be programmed with a single click function, or they can be programmed with what they call gestures. So you can slide the mouse to the left as you click the button, or slide it up, or slide it to the right and slide it down. And those act as gestures, but you can also program one of the buttons as another radial menu. So we have our puck control, which really controls most of our major features. But in addition, there's additional functions that you might want to get access to all the time, like measure or explore object, those kind of things, or snaps on and off. And we put those onto what they call the action ring on this mouse. This is a programmable wheel, so we programmed this to rotate the view. And so when you're using the mouse in kind of production, obviously the squeeze pad, I just squeezed the mouse to pull up this control. If I'm running a command, like if I'm running, let's say, smart draw, and I want to rotate the screen, I can just use the little wheel on the mouse to rotate the screen. So I'm not doing anything on the graphics or anything other than just rolling the mouse wheel, not the center wheel, but this little side wheel. I'm just using that. I've got that programmed to control Q and control E, or Q and E, which is the rotate left and rotate right function on the screen, which gives you this sort of dynamic rotational function while you're working, which means you don't have to kind of hold the control shift key down and draw perpendicular to the alignment to get it to rotate where you want it. That's kind of neat. Then if you go into things like the first button here, if I click on the first button here, it pops up at what they call an action ring, and the action ring can have sub rings. So same way as our puck control can control our commands and our sub commands, you can program this action ring to have shortcuts. In this case, I've got the measurement tools like measure angle, measure distance, measure area, or whatever. And then here you've got access to the layer manager. So you click on the layer manager. These are things that I put on here, the things that I figured I want access to no matter what I'm doing. And then I use the puck control for all our major functions. So in here, this is actually activating the snap control, for example. So that gives you access to the snap functions. You know, if you want to get into things like smart pane, this gets you into smart pane. And that's our smart pane just opened here. And now you've got smart pane. So you can program this in the same way that we program our own control. And this gives you access to a lot of things while you're working. Then when you're doing things like, if you now hold, let's say I'm in the smart draw command again. Let's go back to that a minute, or smart edit. Let's just do that one for now. If I'm in a command, and let's say I change to, let's say, join mode, and I want to do an action, and the actions, I've got these things programmed on the squeeze pad with a left move of the mouse. I've got it programmed to pull up the snaps, for example. So that was just me clicking on the mouse on the side and moving the mouse to the left as I do it, and that will pull up a gesture. If I do the same thing going the other way, it goes into the measure distance command. If I go forwards, it goes to the smart edit command. If I go backwards, it goes to the command pane. So you can program the gestures to do additional things, and all you do is you squeeze the mouse and move it. And each button can be programmed in the same way. If I click on if I'm in the drawing function, let's say I start to draw here, and I say I want to draw, go back to smart draw a minute. So I start to draw here, put in an elevation, and then draw the next couple of points. And I want to start a new line. I can program the middle button on the mouse to be the new line command, and that will just join you straight back up into this control here to start a new line, for example, right? So you can program these buttons. I think I don't have it programmed correctly right now. I've got it changed, but you can also have it to pop up the Shift M menu, which is our little, when I'm down here in drawing mode, I have to be in smart edit to show that one. Sorry, we're just fixing it so it's in all the commands. But if I just do in here, if I do Shift M, it pops up this little command here. And again, you can program that on one of the on the buttons on the mouse, so that you've got actions to all of the kind of major things that you do all the time directly on the mouse, which means you can now move around much quicker and using the mouse as a control function. So hopefully, Marshall, that that answers your question. So a couple of people asked me a question there. So please clarify how Smart Profile ties the 3D lines generated to the correct plan location. So David asked that question. So when I did the Smart Profile, the profile gives me the profile along a line, and in the plan view, I need to have a line that matches it. So let's say I have a plan view line. I'll go back to CAD here a minute. Let's say I've got a plan view line. Like I said, this was the utility line that I showed you, right? Like this. And then in the profile view, I had a profile of that line that shows me the existing ground along that line. Obviously, it would be the same length because it's the same length of line. And let's say it's got the design line associated with that. So this could be the design line that I'm working with. And then let's say I've got a utility line underneath that, which is going from here to here, and then here to here, and then here to here, and here to here. And then I've got manholes that might become, come down from here to here, like this kind of thing, right? So these lines, they're correlated. This profile drawing, which starts at this station and ends at this station, correlates to this line. So when I flip it up, what it does is it converts all of these nodes into station and elevation along along the profile drawing, and then it matches it to station and elevation along this line. So all these lines will then get projected against that. And same for the utilities. If this between here and here is a pipe, and that's this pipe from here to here, then when we made that a 30-inch pipe, when we flip it, it says, okay, that line belongs here and it's a 30-inch pipe, and it will flip it up and it will do it all for you. Okay, so that's how it ties it together. So hopefully, David, that answers your question. Can you say yes or no on the chat if it did? And then, so Cade, you asked a question about these action rings. These action rings can be programmed by application, and these are all just shortcuts. So this would be running Control S for snaps. This would be running the Explore Object shortcut, whatever that happens to be, F8 or whatever that number happens to be. These are the measure functions, and these are the shortcuts for that. So when you program it, you use the Logi Options software, and all you do is you say this button is this key sequence, and that takes care of it. So if I just go into like Logi Options for a second. This is the controlling software that manages it all. So I'm using this mouse, and then I've got these buttons programmed. So all you do is you click on the button, and it says, what do you want to use, the action ring? And you say, configure the actions ring. And then you can apply icons to these, and then you can say which button does which. So this is running Line Marking Manager. If I click on the button, it says which key sequence is that, and that's Control F, right? So if I want to turn the line markings on specific lines, so if I just cancel out of here again, close out of here. Now you do that per application. So each application that you use can have its own configuration. So when I'm running Trimble Business Center, it's using this configuration. But if I was running, Zoom, or I was running, GoToMeeting or something like that, I could program the keys to do different things in that particular application. So once you program the keys up, for example, want to come in here and you say, let's turn off the surface model for a minute. If I say I want to see the line markings on those two, then I would just click on the actions ring, click on line markings now, and the line markings will get turned on those two lines. If I want to change it to these two, then I just click on here and click on line markings, and it will change them from those lines over to these lines, right? So does that answer your question on that? So you program the keys. The first thing is you set up a shortcut for each command. And then once you've set up the shortcut can be applied to that keystroke or that mouse control, and that gives you the management that you need. And this gives you a lot of extra power, and it brings more and more. The reason we're standardizing on it is because we're trying to bring the control away from the dialogue to the cursor, and so that everything runs on the cursor itself, because that makes you a lot more productive. And we're trying to make it so the dialogues just move automatically between the fields for you, so you don't have to worry about clicking in a field and then going back to it to try to make it much smoother to work. And the voice, something Nelson saying, voice macro, the voice command is the next step, right? It is going. The voice macro goes back a long time. We did that a long time ago, and things have moved on a lot in voice control since then, and voice recognition. And it's probably time to revisit that, because if you're working in an office environment which is quiet and you've got it to yourself, then using voice control in addition to everything else is just the next logical step of trying to put stuff on the cursor, on your mouse, on your voice, to be able to run stuff. If you can run it that quickly, the problem with the voice control is it was very specific around individual commands. But if we could educate like an AI engine and build that in, then I think you would be able to use AI to interpret what you're asking and work out which command to run. So I want to build a surface. It would say, okay, Smart Model's the tool for doing that. Or I want to cut cross sections, then the cross section function is to do that. Or I want to featureize objects, then Smart Feature would be the tool. So if you don't know the name of the command, you could ask it a question and have it work out what feature would be the right one to run, or which command would be the right one to run. So I think voice recognition and AI combined, being built into here, would give us another level of automation as well. And now that we've got the command speed up again, I hope you noticed that when I'm running it, the commands are much more fluid than they used to be. And that's because of the new licensing. We've done what we call asynchronous license checking now. So we run the command and then we check the license in the background. And if the license isn't there, it doesn't stop you starting to use the command, but if it doesn't find a license, it comes back and says, hang on a second, you can't do this because you don't have a license for that, right? So it doesn't stop you from running the command, and it doesn't have to do the check before it runs the command. It runs the command and then does the license check in the background. So as long as you've got a license, it will let you use it, and it's much, much quicker to work with as a result. The only time it will stop you is if you don't have a license for the command that you're trying to run going forward. But you're going to find that that's going to give you a lot of speed increase in terms of the startup time for a lot of these commands as well as you go into this. So just lots of small little things that I haven't even talked about here we've done in this release to make things just faster, simpler, quicker, easier, more dynamic. This cross-linking of data and the reporting and the user interface stuff that we've been adding, this is by far the biggest thing that we've ever done. And it's the most exciting thing I've ever done in my career, I would say, what we've done in the last 3 to 4 months. This has been a fantastic ride. The developers, and I'd say they've probably all gone off, probably gone to bed now, but Win and Vitaly, Ann and Ben, they've absolutely knocked it out of the park on this one. They've done a phenomenal job, and it's becoming, 4 or 5 years ago when I started 6 years ago when I started Rockpile, I liked TBC as a product, but I found it kind of frustrating to use. And I'm starting to do stuff today, like I did that corridor takeoff stuff the other day, and it was just a pleasure to work with. It was just quick and easy. I could draw the areas, I created the features, the spreadsheet report was already there. Okay, we found a couple of shortfalls on what we were doing, and we added the cross-section takeoff method into the feature manager. But by doing that, we just made that totally usable. And this is really moving us into a brand new world of speed and usability. And I'm having a lot of fun working with the product now. Hopefully you can tell that it's becoming a way more pleasurable tool to work with and get things done. So it's anyway. So again, any other questions here? Maybe I've missed a few here. Go ahead.
Hey, buddy. Not to be too presumptuous, but I'm pretty excited. All these tools look just phenomenal. I can't wait to get my hands on them and give them a try and all that good stuff. And I want to say thank you to you and your team. This is exciting stuff for not only the estimating world, but I'm sure some surveyors and stuff are probably excited. But did I miss the part where you show us the features about doing like subgrade overbuilds?
So the subgrade overbuilds, we haven't done that yet. So that's work that's in the next sort of 6-8 weeks. So we wanted to get the main features out and all the basic earthworks quantities and takeoff quantities done, get that done and out the way, so that now we can start focusing on over excavation, overbuilds, and boring logs and strata. They're the next big 3, and then trenched quantities after that. And in trenching, we're planning to do more sophisticated trench calculations than TBC, so multi-pipe trenches, so you can have multiple pipes or multiple runs all within the same trench with shelves and stuff like that. So for all these big data center projects that we're doing, we need to kind of expand upon what TBC can do. TBC is too primitive for doing a lot of the complicated stuff. So we're planning to do a lot more work around that. And then next year, our goal is to focus more on corridors and more on continue to work on the utilities with BIM standards and stuff like that, trying to implement more IFC object creation and solid object creation. So I'm hoping we'll get into things like pavement slab modeling and stuff like that next year. Right now we're doing the takeoffs, which is kind of things you asked us for, but I want to take that into full-blown 3D pavement modeling as well. So we have all the joint patterns and stuff all recognized. And anyway, a lot of stuff we got planned for next year. Never stops, but can't do it without you guys supporting us and following us, and we really appreciate all of that. So we don't get a chance to talk to you between now and the end of the year. This will be out hopefully by the end of this week. If not this week, it'll be beginning of next week, I hope. And honestly, that will be it this time. I really believe we're on the home stretch now. And then we have, obviously the Christmas break coming up, and then after Christmas we've got the Power User Conference in January. So if any of you are free in January, the week of the 20, I think it's the week of is it the 21st of January? I can't remember the dates now, but it's in the middle of January. What day is it? The 16th week or the 21st week? I can't remember now. Anyway, it's that in the middle of January, we've got our Power User Conference here in Colorado. 3 days of sessions, mixture of training sessions and discussion sessions, and we'll have my whole team there. The developers, Mel will be there to talk to people about user interface concepts and stuff like that, to get your feedback. And it's the one time of the year that you get a chance to really influence us and influence the whole team I found that by putting my team up in front of you guys on a regular basis, whether it be at Dimensions last couple of weeks ago, or whether it be at the Power User Conference, it gives us a chance to expose them to you guys and what you really want. And it helps me because I'm not having to tell them all secondhand. You get a chance to explain some of the things to our developers, and they're all ears. And it made a huge difference to, like, Ann and Win were at the meeting last year. And, you know, after the meeting, we had a 3-day kind of development meeting here in Colorado, and they kind of like had worked out like a 70-step plan to kind of fix all the things that were raised during the Power User Conference. And I think it was within 40 days, they'd already done more than half of the requests that you guys had during the conference. And the rest of it was all kind of what led us into the featureization stuff and this new takeoff approach. And then Dan's feedback on all the kind of pavement quantities and stuff like that all kind of rolled into what they've been doing last year. But again, we can't do this without your feedback and input and direction. And we're really thankful for the people we deal with. I would say that Rockpile for me has been a fascinating adventure for 6 years. It's been a lot of fun. We've met a lot of great people. The fact that we're talking to you guys directly every week or every couple of weeks is phenomenal. Like, we get so much good feedback, we get so much input, we get so many requests. Of course, we can't always satisfy everything, but we're trying to tackle the really big problems. And again, we can't do it without you. And I can only say I'm really thankful for it. And my team loves working with you as a customer base. And of course, as we get bigger and as our user base gets bigger, it gets a little harder to kind of provide the same level of responsiveness. And Chris and Shane and those guys are doing a fantastic job of trying to keep on top of all the support and training needs that we're creating, consulting needs that we're creating, and all these things that we're adding. There's a whole bunch of training and consulting that's going to be kicking in next year that those guys will be absolutely essential for the point of view of growing the user's knowledge and understanding of this and supporting you as you get going and building your first libraries and stuff. So there's a lot of work coming for everybody. Shane's busy working on the Smart Suite training program, which will be new for January, which will be just an all-new training program just on the Smart Suite stuff, nothing else, just the Rockpile way of doing things from PDF Manager to Smart Plot, kind of all the way through. And so he's busy doing that at the moment. And again, I can't do it without those guys. And then the back office team, you know, Jackie and Simone, they're just knocking that out of the park too. Just getting you set up, configured, changing your licenses, fixing your needs, you know, getting quotes out and estimates out when you get renewal requirements and stuff. They're doing a fantastic job of freeing me up on a lot of that stuff. So again, you know, and Fergus and Mel from the marketing side, and I can't thank Trev enough for, he's picked up on most of the sales activity and he's supporting a massive market now, all on his own pretty much. So I've got to get him some help next year, but he's doing a bang up job. And then Colin is really beginning to ramp up on the tracker side. So we're getting busy on both fronts now, and I'm really excited about what this means for us next year in terms of, you know, how the company's going to have to change and what kind of people we're going to have to add to the team next year. Because it's a fantastic business, this construction, heavy civil space, and there's so much we can do collectively, I think, to make this easier and faster. So again, thank you everybody, and we'll enjoy your, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, and hopefully you have a great holiday period coming up here in a couple of weeks' time. And we'll get back to everything again in January with you, and we'll take it from there. But hopefully we'll see some of you at the Power User Conference in January. And if you want information about that, please reach out to us, and we'll send you an estimate or whatever for getting you there. If you want to bring any of your team members, just let us know. And we've still got spaces there. They are filling up pretty rapidly at the moment. But if you've got, you know, people you want to bring right now, we've got probably another capacity for about another 100 people there. So if you've got needs, please let us know, and we'll love to see you there. Okay. So anyway, have a good week, and thanks everybody for coming on. Really appreciate everything, and it's hopefully we'll see this out there shortly, and hopefully you guys will get to use it in the next couple of months, and let us know what you like, what you don't like. If there's things you don't get, please call. If there's things that you want to see improved, let us know, because we're all ears, right? We've now got the platform that we can really move this forward now. The biggest problem is always building the basic building block tools so we can actually do all the work. And then once you got that done, then refining is the next step, right? So let us know what you need, because our goal is to make this the #1 platform out there for doing heavy highways work, so heavy civil work. So yeah, so let us know what you need. And again, thanks for your support and everything up to now. And hopefully next year will be another great year. Okay. Have a good week.
Hey, Alan, will you give me a call when you get a minute?
Is that Brandon? Yeah, sure.
It is.
Okay. I'll do
I
it in a minute,
appreciate it.
Brandon. Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, no rush.
I just noticed Eric's messages. Is he coming up to Colorado in January?
Eric Schmusser, you mean?
No. Come to
What's your-
Mellicor.
Oh, yeah, he's coming. Yeah.
He-
Trev convinced him to come away to the cold for the few days.
He's gonna
Eric didn't
hate
want to
that.
come in January because it was too cold for him, but he decided that he will come after all. So
Yeah, going from Hawaii to Colorado, that's going to be a bit of a shock in January.
yeah, and now the winter's actually started here. Who knows what it's going to be doing in January, right? So
Mhm.
I'm just checking all these messages and stuff here to make sure I'm going to answer everybody.
I like Nelson's idea. Consider Costa Rica for the next power user group.
Uh-huh. We could do that if we had enough customers down there.
Mhm.
I don't think we get a lot of people traveling down there though for it.
I don't know if we did it in the wintertime, there might be a decent amount of people that would go down there for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to work out how I get this whole dump out of all these questions into it. I guess I can do it somehow. I mean, do you know how to do that?
To be able to dump out the chat stuff?
Yeah.
No, I don't, but I can figure it out. I know
Alan, I had
Shane.
to leave for a second, but did you happen to answer? I had a couple of questions about the PDF manager extraction, data extraction tool, and how it could potentially improve the process of extracting and organizing the vector data for flipping multiple batch cross sections.
So what are you looking for exactly? Who is that
Well,
talking? Sorry, I can't see who's
That's
flashing.
Darren.
Oh, this is Darren.
It's Darren. Hey, Darren. Yeah, so I should have recognized the voice.
So one of the tedious parts of flipping PDF cross sections is organizing all the data.
Yep.
Is there anything specific in the new PDF manager data extraction tool that improves that process?
I think the granularity is going to be better in the extraction, and the recognition of dashed lines versus solid lines, or is better. The main challenge with any PDF is if it's not layered, then recognizing different types of lines by their shape is the next level of kind of extraction. And one of the things that I want to be able to do is look at, and it's not there yet, is identifying, for instance, grid lines. Grid lines are the same length horizontally, same length vertically. They're typically east-west, north-south on the plan. You should be able to recognize those and say, okay, they're grid lines, put them on a grid lines layer. Things like station text, if there's real text in the model, identifying things with a plus in the text string, if it's numerics with a plus, they should be recognizable as a station label, and they could be put on a stations layer. Now, it doesn't mean that's going to be 100% correct, because you could have a plus at the start of a string. So you'd have to say, okay, text with a plus at the start of the string, put it on one layer, because that could be elevation text. If it's a plus in the middle of the string, it's likely to be a station text. So put it on a station layer. And it doesn't mean to say you won't get station callouts, but at least all the stations will be on one layer. Now, if it's somewhat layered by the text heights control that, so station labels tend to be bigger than most of the other text, so that automatically goes on its own layer to a large extent, and we're sorting out more by font type than we used to. So the separation is better, but it's not perfect yet, Darren. There's more we can do there. I'm 100% certain. That's why I got that's why we ended up doing our own data extraction now, is because we were limited by what TBC did TBC goes so far and says, okay, we're good. We can get the data out of a PDF. It's good enough. I'm looking at it and going, no, that's not good enough. Can we recognize contours? Can we recognize grids? Can we recognize station labels? Can we recognize grid labels? Grid labels are written along the bottom axis and along the top axis. Once you know where the grids are, the grid labels are easy to find. All the other shit you can stick on other layers. So we should be able to separate. I think we should be able to separate grid lines, station text, and grid text into 3 different layers automatically. The surfaces tend to come out pretty well. Original ground tends to be on its own layer. The finished design, the problem with finished design is finished design includes the top of the finished design, but also the subgrade, under the roads. And that's the time consuming bit, is getting that separated out. And they're all the same line work, but theoretically, once we know where the grids are, we should be able to know which lines belong to which cross section. And therefore we should be able to say that, okay, these are on one layer and it looks like this is kind of road type data. So maybe we could separate the top section away from the subgrades as 2 separate layers, potentially. I think there's things like that we can do using either AI, image recognition type stuff, or just pattern recognition based on what we know, right? And I think we can do better than we're doing. But that will be the next stage of what Wynn's going to work on with PDF stuff, is to work out how do we do more with the PDF data to make it smarter from the get-go. That's the holy grail, right? If we can now, but what you are going to find though is that with that selectiveness now, when you can go in and say, I don't want that layer, I don't want that layer, I don't want that layer, I don't want the fills. If the text is all polylines, turn all the text off, and then you can turn off the layers that don't contain information that you really think you need. That makes a huge difference. Like on this job, this one here. On this data set here, when you actually look at the line work associated with the profile drawings, for example, they're not cross sections, but they're profile drawings, but it's the same kind of thing. But if you look at turn on the CAD profiles. So these lines were extracted, and I left all the other stuff behind. So the outside sheet borders, the grid labels, don't need them for this workflow, so I just turn them off. So all I got was the pipes that existing in the finished grade model, and there was not much editing to do in here really to make that usable, right? And then with the featureization process, you're really featureizing from here. You're not having to sort it out quite so much, right? You're saying this, and this are catch basins. This is a 30-inch pipe. These are 12-inch pipes or whatever. So you're using the featureization function more to convert the data onto the right layers. And that makes it easier because you're not having to sort of go, which layer do I want to put that on? And, you can, by featureizing it, you can say, if you've got grid lines, and you've got station labels, and you've got grid text labels, you may still have to select some stuff, but you can make it a lot quicker by using the featureization process for CAD profiles and cross sections. So you'll find that that's going to be quicker, but just the fact that you can get rid of all this other stuff in the process of bringing in the PDF and just get what you need, it makes it a lot quicker, right? It's quicker, but it's not perfect, right? Does that answer your question?
Yes, and also with that tool, the smart profile tool, one of the things that we send to the field, our deliverable to the field for storm utilities, say, we always have 25-foot offsets at the flow line elevation, and for instance, on a curb inlet, it would be on the center of the inside front face. Is that something that can be built into a feature? Like say, we know that this is a full bay.
Absolutely, it can. I mean, Vitaly's been working on this smart takeoff function. I don't know if you've looked at that at all, but the smart takeoff tool, the idea behind this was not smart takeoff, smart stakeout rather, smart stakeout here. Smart stakeout, the intent of this was if you're trying to create stakeout data for a structure, then you pick the kind of structure, like a box structure, then you can tell it how you want to create the stakeout data. So this is a bit like featureization, but for staking purposes. But there's no reason why this couldn't be built into the feature as well, right? So it isn't today, but it's the sort of thing that just like rebar can be calculated into the pavement quantity, the stakeout information for structures could be built into a structure. So as you featureize an object and say there's a box structure here and it's 24 by 36 or whatever the size happens to be, then it can calculate the structure location from the invert and the rim, and the orientation then has to be set. But once you've set the orientation, then the points associated with that for staking out could be associated with the feature. So you could say I want 25 foot along the long axis, or you may want two points, one at 10 foot and one at 25 foot, or whatever the distances are. You could set those and put those on a layer and have it create those automatically. There's no reason, as you featureize the box, or create the box, you would actually be able to create those stakeout data at the same point. That's the whole kind of objective of what we're trying to do with Smart Feature, is not just build the feature, but build the other data that's associated with the feature, like the rebar, the tie bars, put in the intelligence into the feature so that you just have to create the feature and everything else comes out of it. Does that make sense? So if we know the rules that you want to apply, and it's a shame that you're not coming to January, right? But you and I can get together at some point and talk through some of these things and start looking at maybe what we would do to box structure features for staking utilities or pipe utilities, what you want for staking of the pipe utilities, and build those into the pipe objects directly and build them into the structure objects directly is what I would do.
That would be amazing.
Because then you're building a tool that's building the model and the data that you need from the model for all the operations on site, right? And that's kind of what I'm trying to get to, is I don't want to be building just another data prep tool. Like, data prep is what we've been doing for the last, whatever it is, 15, 20 years, right? And nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying you guys do a bad job or anything like that. Don't read that the wrong way. But the reality is data prep is a science that has evolved to the point where we're now trying to build constructible data, right? And constructible models, we've been talking about those since I was at Trimble. But realistically, Trimble hasn't moved on in what I would call a constructible model standpoint. It's when we're building road pavement, you're not just building the pavement, you're building how to build it. Like, you need 5 foot outside, you need 2 foot inside and 10 foot on the other side for a curb and gutter machine. How do you build that as part of the feature? So if you're building a curb feature, then you need to build how you're going to build it into the curb feature so that that drives the model building process, right? And you can put those on their own layers. So as you build the feature, you draw the curb and all the other data comes out of it automatically. That's my goal with all this stuff, right? So it's not there yet, but the vision is there at least, right? And we're beginning to get there. And as you know, we learn as we go, right? It's amazing evolution. Like, I started Vitaly off on the Smart Profile tool, and then Anne almost started in parallel on Smart Feature. And you get to the end of it and you go, well, Smart Feature needs to build the feature library, which contains all the pipes and utilities and structures, but Smart Profile needs to convert the line work into those features as you flip them into 3D. So Smart Profile as a tool is going to leverage it, and does leverage Smart Feature, right? Because it's using the feature library that we're creating as you do it. So as you featureize the line work for the pipes in this diagram here, so as you go into this, if you're in Smart Profile here, as you kind of say, you start telling it in this tab here, you basically are featureizing, right? So you pick the profile you're working with. Then as you start getting into this, you start saying, okay, well, I'm working with the pipes, and the feature I want to work with is this type of pipe. And it's this line represents the invert of that pipe. This line represents the invert of that pipe. And so that sets up the attributing on this so that when you flip it, it converts it into the pipe itself, right? And that's kind of how this is working. So this is this is Feature Manager right here, running inside Smart Profile. So Feature Manager is going to underpin more and more of what we do. So Smart Stakeout, if you want to do creation of points for staking, then what's the feature that you're staking? The box structures. Okay, well, then create all the points for the box structures. That kind of thing. So these kind of go together, because you might not want the stakeout points being created while you're building the model, but you want to build it extremely quickly once you've built the model, because you're going to want to get the manholes in the right place and get them rotated correctly. And once you've got that done, then you want to build the stakeout data from it, right? So again, tying something like Smart Stakeout to Smart Feature. So Smart Feature defines how the object is created and what subsidiary data you want from it. And then you apply it through an application that's dedicated to the task, right? So if you're building point data for staking, or line data for staking, or you're building models for curb and gutter machines or models for paving machines, what are the rules, right? And that's the big trick on here, is like the rules for rebar and tie bars and that stuff were just stuff we had to understand. Once you've understood them, you can build them into the feature so that then you can build the tie bars and rebar directly from the concrete pavement object, right? and make it dynamically linked. So that's the next big jump of everything we're doing here is how do we make really constructible objects from the data that we're creating. Hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, thank you very much.
And that's, you know, that's what I want to learn, and that's why we're doing these user conferences once a year now. And your team, you know, I'm sure the people you're sending are going to be able to give us some other feedback that you would give us. But again, I like the feedback you give me. You know, I trust you a lot, right? In terms of the way we get direction and input from the field. You're one of the main people I call when I have requests and help, and I really appreciate all those inputs you give me and insights you give me. And your team is awesome to deal with, so you know that. So
thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, let's sit down and talk about that stuff when we get time. And if I have to come out to Missouri, I can do that. I can come out sometime in the new year and just sit down with you for a few days when you've got time. Okay.
Love that.
Okay, and maybe we could double that up with some other stuff we do in your office while I'm there, or something, you know, training some of your estimators or whatever you might want to do, right? So, yeah, let's try to organize
Sounds
something.
good.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay, Ryan, you stayed on the call here. You got questions, or maybe not there? Dan? Okay, then I'm going to bail here, and we'll get back to anybody who asks questions on the chat here, and I'll try to answer those by email this afternoon. Okay, thank you.